actually went to rescue kids. Like, at what point were you at in your life where you're like, right, this is the right thing to do?
And I heard about a guy that was going into the mountains to find these kids. This operation being run in Southeast Asia called the Grey Man, who were going in, getting kids out of child slavery, human trafficking. And when I heard the stats, 1.6 million kids a year, and here's the kicker, sold by their families. Initially going into these brothels to identify the underage kids with a hidden camera and stuff like that. Once I was there, I was like, oh my God, everything that had happened in my past, my special forces training, everything, all of a sudden started to make sense.
But ladies and gentlemen, today I'm joined by a guest whose life story almost feels like a bit of an action film. For those that don't know, he is on SAS Who Dares Wins, which is like a TV program where people sign up to, which go through SAS training. But he's actually done this his whole life, like from leaving school, he went on to join the Marines. He was in the SAS and SBS. It was the SAS and SBS?
SAS selection and SBS.
Yeah. So basically, he's literally looked at the devil right up close in his face. But he's gone on to doing some incredible things. He's just moved to Dubai. And I'm so lucky to be able to have him on this podcast to just pick his brains for the next couple of hours to help you guys at home hopefully take some nuggets of wisdom and implement it in your life to hopefully go on and achieve great things. So please join me in welcoming the legend that is Ollie Ollerton. How are you?
What an introduction, mate.
Yeah.
I was just thinking then when you said, who's looked the devil right in the eyes? And I thought, and I thought straight away, that was when I looked in the mirror.
I mean, this is actually something I'm going to talk to you about later on, but like, you must have seen some horrific things like in your time. So does that ever actually haunt you?
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, I think this horrific is relative. Like when I was in the, I've seen some bad things, some really bad things, but I don't really consider them that bad.
Yeah.
And I think that's just part of the course that you're trained to deal with that. You know what I mean? So what I've seen, there's other people in my world that go, he's seen nothing. But there's then other people at the other end of the scale that go, oh my God, what would I do if I was faced with that situation? So really it's relative. You know, at the end of the day, the stuff that I have seen, I've always turned into good.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, you've got to take yourself out from being the focus point and understand you're something bigger than that. And that's how you deal with it. It's like stuff that I've done, I've always pushed, how is it serving someone else? You know, like seeing kids that were being sold into slavery. You know, instead of being traumatized by seeing those kids and knowing what was going to happen to them, it's really allowing my focus to be on the value of saving those kids and what it's done for their lives.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can, you know, at the end of the day, some of the stuff that's happened to me, some people I just would never want to go through that, but I actually value it.
Yeah.
Because it's put me to where I am today, and where I am today is fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And if I hadn't had that journey, would I be here today? Would I be sat with you? Would I have been on TV? So I don't regret anything, and the things I've gone through have all been for a purpose.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's literally, I obviously said to you, I was like, you got 2 hours because usually I go on for an hour, but I don't think I could ever condense your story to an hour because there is so much that you've actually done, and obviously even going on to the situation of the child slavery in, was it Thailand, right, that you went to? I mean, it's just like, it's literally just, you've like bundled so many lives together into one. But I mean, it is fascinating. I do find it fascinating because I've actually spoken to a few military people, like some have gone on to do really interesting things in business, and some have actually like really struggled like mentally and stuff. But and that's why I think it's a special type of mindset, because when you see what you see, to be able to actually come out of that in a positive light. But then some other guys, I mean, you know, there's no secret to the fact that a lot of people commit suicide or they have really, really bad mental struggles. So what do you think you're doing differently and some of these people are doing differently that are like you that actually use this as a positive?
I think people become a product of their past. You know, this is the problem. A lot of people come out and you imagine someone that was high up in the military, special forces or whatever, and then they come out and they've got nothing as big pulling them through. And this is when you talk about, you know, mankind in general, because the rug's been pulled from under our feet. Our purpose has been pulled away. And when someone leaves the military and then has nothing where they feel like they've got a sense of purpose, then they start to go into a flat spin. Then they start to drink heavily. And I'm talking from personal experience here. And the longer that you're, as a species, right, we are addicted to the past. We are constantly looking to the past for the answers for the future, unless you're aware of that. And then you can start to redefine your future. But really, there's a lot of people, and this is why, for me, I'm always creating something bigger. Like, I'm proud of the fact I did Special Forces selection. I did it a long time ago. It's a stepping stone for me. It's not a benchmark of the past that I'm still living off. And I know the TV show was, and that was a big question for me. I went on that TV show and I was like, I wanted to get out of the military so bad. And now I'm in a show that relives me being in the military. It's like me going on back in this revolving circle back to a place I didn't want to go.
Yeah.
And that wasn't because of like massive trauma and everything. It was the fact that I actually didn't think I didn't think the Special Forces was for me. I now look back and realize how important that was in my journey.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have been able to do the things that I've done after that unless I'd done the Special Forces selection and I got that training. But the thing is that at that moment in time, I didn't feel it was where I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And for me, I mean, looking back for me, I was still living off that trauma as a 10-year-old that got attacked at the circus that day, my first memory of life on this planet. And the fact of the matter was that this is what we do, right? This is it. I don't care what anyone says. This is it in a nutshell. What we're looking for externally is something we need to address internally. So as a young kid, I was attacked by a chimp at the circus, nearly killed me. And it was a defining moment for me. After that attack, I did what you should never do when it comes to trauma. Okay, and this is what we all do as well. I believe we've got this innate ability to be able to get that trauma, put it into a box and push it away. And that's really useful because it helps you get over the short term. It works in your favor. It helps you get over the short term. You can push it away, but it doesn't mean that you're supposed to leave it.
Yeah.
And this is what I did. I locked it away, pushed it away, never addressed it again. I'm not likely to because I was 10 years old. There was no one there to say we need to deal with that. But the thing is, for me, you can't hide from it. It created such an imprint on me. And I was then basically, I look back at it now and, hindsight never won any wars, but it's fucking great for reflection. Do you know what I mean? It helps me now. I'm still unpicking the past. I'm still learning from the past, which helps me create my future. But really for me, it was like I then surrounded myself with the hardest people on the planet. Do you know what I mean? When I was at school, I came from like a pretty well-to-do family. But then I made sure that I had the toughest people around me. And I look at it now, and it was so comical about what I was doing. I was getting the hardest people. I was creating an army around me, almost like this armor, because I've been attacked by that animal. It was protected. So I was. And then what I did straight after school, I then joined the biggest boys club in the world, the Royal Marines, which was then the biggest. An amplification of that with weapons, you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's so funny when I look back. And then I went the next level, the Special Forces, doing the same thing. But what I was always doing as well was hunting for war. I was hunting for war. And I got to the Royal Marines. I wasn't satisfied there. That then took me to the Special Forces. I wasn't satisfied there. I then left. I then found myself in a war zone for 4 years as a mercenary. I didn't find what I was looking for there. I then went on to Southeast Asia. I did find what I was looking for there, but it was still somewhere that was a battle. And it wasn't until I crashed and burned that I actually realized, looking back, that what I was looking for was this war, this battle to address. And it was inside. All the time it was inside. And that was an epiphany for me. Yeah. And really, we cannot change our environment unless we change the energy of who we are. So all these people that are looking externally, it's because they don't understand that the magic of what they're looking for is within. And this is where so many people, veterans, everyone, not just veterans, everyone gets lost. Because it's like, you look at a relationship, for instance. I'm going to separate, I'm going to get rid of that person. I'm going to move somewhere else. I'm going to get a fresh start. And you move somewhere else, it's like a job as well. A shit in your job or whatever, you're having a shit time, not getting on with your boss. You move, I'm going to move jobs, go somewhere else.
Same happens.
Honeymoon period. Do you know what I mean? Best behavior for a period of time. And then before you know it, you're straight back into the same thing because you haven't changed who you are. You've tried to fix the environment and not fix you. And that's where the answers were. And that's what I realized in that moment. And this is where I think so many people are stuck because they're not prepared to do the work on themselves. They think they can just change their environment. And when they can't change the environment, they're blaming the environment.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We're looking external for our success. We're looking for blame, everything.
Yeah, I've worked with so many people that do exactly that. And I remember sitting in a board meeting once and saying to the people, like, listen, guys, like we're constantly talking about how this person's shit, how that person's shit. At what point, after however many years it was, are we actually going to look internally and go, what are we doing wrong? Like, what am I doing wrong? What could I be doing better? Like, rather, and it is a shame. It's like it was something that obviously it's not a podcast about me, but I did a lot of like finding myself. So how weird it is, but like I just became so self-aware of like what was happening internally that it actually made me understand what was going on externally. And it was weird. It was like a kind of process of just like really understanding. But we'll talk like. I really want to cover, I know that you talk a lot about, obviously, this chimp attack, because it's obviously literally like what shaped you to what you are today. So we'll come on to that. But one thing I want to know is like, you talked about finding kind of like what was going on internally. At what point was that in your life? How old were you when you actually discovered like, well, actually, this was my problem, and that's how I kind of overcame it and went on to that next chapter?
That for me was when I went across, I did that work in Southeast Asia, rescuing kids from trafficking, basically, sex slavery. And it was after that, when I stumbled over that, because I went over there because my moral compass switched on. It was like, I need to do something. I had this calling just to go out there to help these kids. I had no idea of the gift that was going to give me. Now, it was the best investment I've ever made with the best return on investment. And I wasn't even being paid. For the first time in my life, I wasn't being paid. And this, on a couple of things, had a everlasting effect on me. First of all, because I've been chasing cash all of my life. I didn't get paid much in the military. I then left. I was a mercenary. Got paid loads for doing that, but I still wasted all the money away and this, that, and the other. But everything was always, I was money's bitch. Okay, I was alcohol's bitch.
That is so fun. I've never heard that before. I was money's bitch.
I was money's bitch. I was pornography's bitch. I was alcohol's bitch. Everything,
looking for just a high, just an easy high.
Yeah, distraction, and the thing, when I went over to there to rescue those kids, it's the first time something more important than money sat in front of me. And I was passionate about doing something. I saw those kids. I saw the power of what we were doing, helping those kids, seeing them going up the street after we'd rescued them, going into the orphanage, and then seeing two little girls, knowing where they would have ended up, walking up the street into the sunrise with a school uniform on, a little satchel, holding each other's hands, laughing. I can remember that memory of seeing that. And that was like, oh my God, I almost felt selfish because it was giving me so much.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think in this day and age, everyone's so fucking addicted to having followers on Egogram or social media platforms and everything else. Everyone is so addicted to vying for position, even in close-knit sort of networks like Premier League football teams or whatever, as an example, corporate teams. They're so eager to vie for position. They're prepared to step over people, that they consider as their colleagues and their friends. This society has all been created about coming first. And it's such a... It's broken our society. I'll tell you what, now, if you look at this word, right, competition, what to you, Daniel, what does competition mean?
It means like you're going to basically be the best and beat people.
Yeah, right, okay, but it wasn't always meant to be that way. That word has been changed purposely. That word, competition, you can actually look this up on Google. The word competition means to strive together. Okay, which totally contradicts what it means in our society today. Today, it means to beat the other person. It's meant to mean we strive together. So this person with the knowledge helps this person without the knowledge. This person has the gift of, helping that person, educate them. And this person has the gift of learning that. And through that, you rise together.
Yeah.
But this society, through our schooling and everything, is basically taught us to go against each other. It's created division at all levels. And you just look at society today. I mean, you know, it's just everywhere. Race, color, religion. What are there? 3,000 religions. You know what I mean? It's like, one thing I tell you now, I'll say this as well. I love this about, how come, right? We live in Dubai. Okay. People from all over the world, all in one place, different religions, genders, whatever. Is there any arguing? No. So why is that? So why is that not happening here, and it's happening in other places? And people will say, well, you're not allowed to. Well, I think there's a little bit more depth to it than that.
Yeah, everyone respects you. And I think, again, it's like the first thing that came into my mind when you said that is the leadership lead by example, whereas other countries, they don't. You know, it's like, you know, I'm all for Donald Trump, like, and as I said to you before, but there are stuff that he says where I'm just like, it's a bit contradictive to be like, you know, close the borders, close this. I know there's a problem with these types of things, but like, it's not all their fault. You know, there's some pretty fucked up American people as well. And I think, you know, and again, it's going back to like, exactly. So it's like going back to like deflecting outwards rather than actually going, right, internally, what is the problem, right? And I think this is, I beat the drum on this all the time, and people are like, oh my God, you love the blah, blah, blah. And it's funny because I had a conversation with a lady in the UK, and she's like, yeah, I said, you can WhatsApp me if you want. And she said, she goes, you have WhatsApp? I'm like, yeah, I've got WhatsApp. And she was like, oh, I thought you had problems with WhatsApp. I was just like, you can't WhatsApp call, but like, we have WhatsApp. And it's just literally just like, everyone just doesn't realize what this place is actually like. No. And it is incredible. I mean, there's a place in Abu Dhabi where you've got a mosque, a church, a synagogue, and I'm really bad with the Jewish one, but they're all in the same street. They literally come out of service and they're all together, mixing. And that's
respecting
how it should be.
Each other.
It's how it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. But what was the question anyway? Because I think we got that.
I don't know.
I'm just going to make sure I answered your question.
I don't know. We went on such a tangent, I even forgot.
Yeah.
But here's one question. You're from Burton, right?
Yeah.
Please tell me you know what oatcakes are.
Oatcakes?
Yeah. Because Burton's close to Stoke, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You've never tried oatcakes?
I think I have. You have to remind me what they are.
Cheese and bacon oatcakes. It's like a savoury wrap with cheese and bacon, and they melt it. Oh, mate, I literally was like, when I heard you talking about, when I listened to your book, I listened to it on audio, when you were talking about being from Burton-on-Trent, I was like, that's close to Stoke. He must know what oatcakes are. That's where my dad's from.
Oh, right.
So like half of the family are from Stoke-on-Trent. I'm Stoke City fan, all that. So I've kind of adopted it, but
yeah.
That's a shame. But I'll have to.
It sounds good though.
Oh, mate, they're amazing. They're amazing. But it's like a Staffordshire thing.
Yeah.
But like, not many people know about it. Like, my girlfriend's Brazilian. I introduced her to them, and she's like, "These are amazing. Brown sauce, little savoury pancake with some cheese and bacon. Voila."
Sounds great.
But we obviously went on and on and on. But for those that actually don't know who you are, just give us a brief like overview of kind of like who you are, what you've done, and let's go back to the earlier days and talk about you growing up, because, as you said a second ago, like, you know, most people think about growing up and they're like, it's all happy and stuff, but you had some pretty traumatic experience. So yeah.
Yeah, so basically I am a former UK Special Forces soldier, came from the shadows into the spotlight with a very popular TV show in 2015 called SAS Who Dares Wins, which, as you explained before, the intro is basically where we take members of the public, celebrities as well, and we put them through a little taster of Special Forces selection. It's very much a fly-on-the-wall kind of storytelling process, and it's a process of elimination. So it's very compelling to the public, because the public love to see people suffer when they're sat on their sofas at home, and especially when they're celebrities as well. So yeah, to me, 2015 that started. I did about 6 series in the UK, well, all over the world actually, but for the UK, Channel 4. And then I moved on to Australia. So I've been doing the show there ever since. And honestly, I never set out to be a celebrity. I'll say that much.
Are you still doing Australia?
We are still doing Australia, yeah. So that's still going ahead, which is great. And I love that show. But the thing is, for me, it is a bit of a side show, because my dream, my passion, everything is Breakpoint. My business, which is all about showing people that there is growth, or there is growth in discomfort, and it's about stepping into that process of change. So really, yeah, and I've written 5 books, 6 books actually. I co-authored on the first one. I've got coaching groups and all sorts, and yeah, I constantly pushing my boundaries.
Yeah. Was there any fallout with the Channel 4 stuff in the UK? Because it all kind of like, it was such a weird move that they just like changed it up, because everybody, you were almost like kind of like national treasures.
We were invincible at that point. That they, what is the word? What is the term?
Ant got cancelled for saying something, or it was
well, it was me first, because it came around that time that they wanted diversity and everything, and having four white guys. But I tell you what, though, really for me, when I look at it, it had to happen for me.
Yeah.
And when I did get that phone call before we went to film the next series, I was like, the only thing that was hurting was my ego. Because your ego goes, I don't want to look like a fool in front of everyone. Everyone's going to question why I've been axed. But really inside, as I'm getting that phone call, I'm whispering to myself, you got what you asked for. Because I didn't want to be there. We weren't getting on as a team. I didn't find it enjoyable. I had this business that I was focused on, Breakpoint. And every time I went away each year to film, it's twice, to do both the non-celebrity and the celebrity. Every time I went away, my business went back. I didn't get any traction. And then we got the offer for the Australian gig. So then I was turning into this, this celebrity that was doing all these shows. And I thought, I can remember the one thing that I said to myself, and I said, and there's a big story behind how it all happened, but that was the one thing that I set in stone when I was there. When I had nothing, I said, I want this business Breakpoint, and I was visualizing, I was meditating, I was doing everything I never knew that worked. And that was the one thing that I was just pleading for exposure. The TV show came about crazily, and that was my platform.
Yeah.
So really for me, what was given to me was the platform. It should never have taken me away from this. So really for me, that falling down in the UK, it was good for me.
What was happening with the team? You said that you weren't getting on with some people. Was it like the people you were hosting it with, or was it just generally the film crew? Or?
No, I don't mind saying really. I mean, at the end of the day, they brought 4 guys together, alpha males, we're all different ranks, different experience, some more than others. And there was a bit of a vie for position. At the end of the day, it caused a bit of friction, I think, how the channel was sort of engineering the whole thing to work. And it caused a bit of friction in the team. I mean, we did what special forces do, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to like each other. But when it comes to doing the job, you get shit done. And we were used to, if you didn't do it, people get killed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we knew that. And I know people weren't going to get killed on the show, but the thing is, we still hold that kind of mentality.
Yeah.
Personal difference, ill feeling, leave it there, get the job done.
Yeah.
We had a great time, we had a laugh, but there were some moments where there was quite a lot of friction and everything.
Yeah.
But, on the whole, it was a brilliant show, great to work with the lads. And, now it's carried on in Australia, which is brilliant.
Who are you working with on the Australian one?
Me and Ant.
Yeah.
And there's also another 2 lads who have actually been on the UK show, and that is a lad called Staz, who's one of the directors or the founders of Through Dark, the clothing brand, and another lad called Jay Morton. So both of those guys, ex-SAS guy Jay was, great guys. And I'll tell you now, I mean, taking nothing away from the old crew, like the last time we filmed was in Jordan, and it was like 4 kids being together on their first birthday. It was just a laugh. It was brilliant. I had so much fun.
Nice. So earlier life then, so, growing up, You came from a really good family, right? I mean, what was it that your dad actually did?
Well, initially, my dad had an engineering company. So, I was at private school and all this in my early years. All 3 of us were.
From literally from a young age straight into private school?
Yeah, straight into private school. So I was more at prep, kind of the early sort of levels of that private school, a very reputable school. And then all of a sudden, overnight to words, that all ended. And before you knew it, we were at a state school, which was pretty tough going.
How old were you then when you went into state school?
I think it was about 7 years old.
Is that when your dad left and went?
No, it wasn't that. I mean, to be quite honest, I talk about this because when I had that attack at 10 years old, I can't remember much before that.
Yeah.
The only things I do know is really
trauma just erases it in
the
your
trauma
brain.
erased it all, and it's like the only stuff I really know about pre-10 is stuff that my family's told me. So there's vague memories, bits and bobs, but nothing. I really cannot remember much at all. And to be honest, all those early years for me was all trauma. And it wasn't a fact. It was, we had a great family. My dad actually left it, I think I was about 13, 14. And that's when I really started getting into trouble with the police and things like that. But, really, to be honest, I was happy when he left. I was really happy when he left.
Yeah.
I just felt like, now I look back and I think, because I am super disciplined and I love that discipline, but at that time as a kid, I hated it. Do you know what I mean? I felt like more like my dad's employee than his son.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I felt there was a lot of, our childhood was kind of stripped away, being a kid was stripped away. But, the good things, the silver lining, which I always focus on, is the fact that it created that discipline for me. Which it's quite interesting, though, because when I actually joined the military, because I've been had that discipline my whole life. When I got to the military, I was like, fuck you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I just went against all of the military sort of hierarchy. I was a nightmare.
Yeah.
I did my job and everything, but I was a nightmare.
So obviously you're 10 years old. You go to a circus. You see what seems to be a cute little chimp right in front of you. And then all hell breaks loose. Walk us through what actually happened.
Yeah, it was in Burton-on-Trent that day, and we were actually going swimming. And it's a crazy story how this story evolved for years afterwards as well. But best friend knocked on the door. Me and my brother went swimming off down to the baths, and then we saw the circus there in town in front. As we got down through, looked across to where the swimming baths was, and there's the circus set up. And we're like, oh my God, it was like 1980. We used to get excited about circuses and stuff like that.
It's kind of like the thing, wasn't it, when the circus
was
down?
It's massive. It was like the fair or the circus, wasn't it? It was like, it's brilliant. So anyway, got down there and then we went, asked if we could have a look around. This guy let us, and 1980, you could there was no health and safety per se. You could do what you wanted. You know what I mean? People driving drunk and no seatbelts and all sorts of stuff. They still do. I don't. But anyway, I got into the big top and I looked at it and nothing really appealed to me. And I was drawn to the canvas, this split in the canvas, which was the marquee door. And I just walked away from my brother and his best mate. And before I knew it, I was pulling this canvas to one side, very inquisitive as a kid. And there, sat in the open expanse, was this little baby chimp. And I was absolutely infatuated by this. What I was seeing, because I was in love with Tarzan at that age of my life. I used to watch it every single day. I watched it that day, and it was like something I was like, and that for me was like a little piece of Hollywood. You know what I mean? That was this. I was like so compelled to go and see this chimp, but I was so cautious. But I made my way to it. There was just me, the chimp, this open expanse, the trailers, the tents behind, and then before I knew it, I was standing over it. It wasn't much bigger than the chimp because I was only 10. And then I looked down, this thing looked up at me with these beautiful big brown eyes. It was a moment I can still remember.
Can you still see that moment?
I can still see it, I can still see the eyes. I can still remember the energy of the moment. I really can. And then, I know it sounds weird, but for a moment, we connected. It was incredible. And then this chimp just reached down to the floor and started passing me something. I realized it was food. I was now this baby David Attenborough. And I was like, I'm not taking that food. It's disgusting, right? But I'm not going to break the serenity of that moment. So I took the food and I'm sliding it down my cheek, and then it goes down. And it's this is this magical moment. Time stood still. It was just me, the chimp, beautiful blue sky, hot summer's day in the days where we used to have hot summer's days. And it was peaceful. It was the serenity of that moment was incredible. But then, almost as severe as a fighter jet cutting through the sky, I heard a roar I'll never forget, and that was something was moving underneath the trailer. Wow! And I looked up straight away, and that was clearly Mummy or Daddy heading to me at Mach 10. Absolutely ferocious.
I was going to say, was it coming at peak pace?
Yeah. It was like doing the whole sideways things, coming and all this is happening so fast, and I'm stood. I couldn't move. I was just like. But then at the moment, I thought, right, I need to get out of here. This thing just pounced through the air. And the blue sky turned to black. This thing landed on my chest, pinned me to the floor, and smash. I can remember that first fist and nothing.
I was going to say, it must have knocked such wind out of you.
The power of a chimp and a 10-year-old boy. You know what I mean? And then it was just like a drummer in a rock band. I was the drum, and this thing was smashing the shit out of me. And then just at that moment when I was just trying to defend myself, and I literally wanted just to die and just protect myself, lay down and whatever. And it was in that moment that something went no. It was this survival mechanism kicked in. And I did hear this voice that said, you're not dying today. And when you're in those kind of situations, you're going to have to up the ante. You're going to take it to the next level. But when you're pushed into that corner, that's somewhere you're prepared to go. You forget there's consequences of that moment.
Yeah.
This is happening really fast. I'm not thinking about anything apart from this just happened. It's instinct. But I went to this place where I had this ability to confront this chimp, and I smashed it as hard as I could, dislodge it, foot up to my chest, smashed it in the chest, knocked it to the floor, and that was my moment for escape. And I was like, it was pointless. You know what I mean? I was like moving across the floor. I saw this thing get up. It was even angrier now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was like had my blood all in its teeth and everything. I could, you know, on that attack.
I was going to say, had you started to feel like the pain of like...
I wasn't the pain, but I knew, you know, when I was there and I was trying to protect myself, I could feel the flesh being torn from the skin or from my arms. And I can remember looking and seeing blood and, you know, and then, anyway, so this thing then is like crazy. It's coming for me. It's you know, the death final attack. And it was only an inch away from my face before the chain caught it. And if it wasn't for that chain, I wouldn't be here. So, and that for me, you know, that's my business is called Breakpoint because that was my first breakpoint moment. And breakpoint is the moment you decide, or the breakpoint is when you step into short-term discomfort for long-term gain. The short-term discomfort was fighting a grown chimp at 10. And the long-term gain of that was the fact I'm here today. And it was the fact that also understanding that potential that we all have. Every single person has that potential. But unless we know that that's there, we live within these limitations. But that would then help me get through Special Forces selection twice. It would also help me on the brink of, I'd say on the brink of suicide, to really understand that there's much more in the tank.
Yeah. Did you feel suicide in that moment when you were recovering or later on in life?
Far later on in life.
Yeah.
Far later on. You know, I had so much energy after, you know, not just after that, but as a kid, you know, I mean, I got into a lot of trouble. I had no sense of any kind of consequence. I was just going mental.
Yeah.
I had all this energy that wasn't focused in the right direction. And at that point, my dad had left, and it was my mum, bless her. She struggled. Her marriage broke down. Finances, you know, she had to support 3 kids on one wage. And, you know, in that time, I was neglected. Do you know what I mean? It was like, and I think a lot of times the kids have to have that energy directed in the right way. Otherwise, it goes in the wrong way. And it certainly did for me. But it was at that point my mum could see what was going on. And she actually, you know, with all that was going on with my mum, she reached down and you know, got hold of me and put me in the right direction.
Yeah.
And which was incredible.
What injuries did you actually have from that day?
Well, I had this, as you can see, that's all in there, but basically a big chunk was taken out of that arm. But I mean, there was bites all over me. There's bits didn't get to my face because I was covered up. But really, I mean, it wasn't the physical; it was the mental scars that day. That I, you know, and again, like I said before, you know, we lock up that trauma, push it away. No one's ever dealt with that, and I find it really interesting now that I got in so much trouble with the police. That, you know, again, I came from a decent family, not half decent. We were a decent family. I'm not taking away anything from. I'm not trying to say I'm better than anyone else. I'm just saying we had, you know, it wasn't the usual people.
You had the providings of what would be, you know, reasonable. Especially, I mean, I came from a council area, so I'm okay with saying I came from like a half
exactly.
family,
I wasn't the typical person you'd expect to be in trouble with the police. You know what I mean? And my brother and sister definitely weren't in trouble with the police. It was just me. But it got to the point where I wasn't stopping. Even when I was getting caught for stuff, I was still going and going and going. It's almost like I needed to be stopped with something severe that would go, you know, really give me a shake up. And that was the fact that I can remember I got caught stealing stuff. And it was at that point, I can remember them saying to me, it was like, right, you've got 2 choices now. You can either your dad pays for your bail or you go to a remand home.
Was this for the sawn-off shotgun?
No, this was not for the sawn-off shotgun because this was after that. I was stealing clothes from this shop.
Oh, no. So you'd literally got away with the sawn-off shotgun and then
I'd just been caught for the shotgun. Just been caught. And this was the thing, right? You'd think that'd be enough, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You'd think that'd be enough to go pull your head in.
But the fact that they let you off kind of was like the worst thing, right?
It's like, oh, well, you know, obviously it's not that severe because I was waiting to go to court. You know, it was, well, actually, what had happened initially was the fact that I managed to blag the police for weeks and weeks on end, saying that I'd found the shotgun. Do you know what I mean? And they were like, then they'd link the shotgun to all these post office robberies. You know, it was a sawn off shotgun that I'd sawn off at 14 years old. And the reason, and even the police said it was a fucking brilliant job.
Did they actually say to you, fucking hell, that was good?
That's a really good job. And the thing is, it's because my dad used to get us to do jobs all the time.
Yeah.
And one of those jobs that we used to do was cutting copper pipe.
Yeah.
You know what I
So
mean?
you're quite used to it.
I was like, so I got the thing in the vice that night. I'd stolen it from someone's house. You know, my mate had the keys to get in someone's house that he used to babysit for. We got to this house. I saw the shotgun. I was like, I need that in my life. I just watched Rambo. You know, so I was like, I need to get that. I got it home, got it in the vice, bang, straight off. I took it from that down to that.
Wow.
Which was crazy, thinking I was 14 years old, running around with a shotgun. I got someone to buy me a load of cartridges for it.
It could have ended
It could
so
have got
badly.
so bad. It could have got so bad. Like mates, my brother, everyone could have been shot. I could have shot myself, for God's sake. But, you know, sort of learning on the ground how to maneuver a shotgun.
Do you think because obviously at this time, right, because it was very similar, like, again, like when I said to you when we've had a chat to that, like our stories are so similar. Like when my dad left, I was upset, but then in reality I was actually quite happy because he was such an aggressive guy. Like, but then obviously my mum went from being 2 parents, 2 incomes, 1 income, receptionist, not earning much money, having to pay a mortgage, feeding 3 kids. Dad was an absolute arsehole to my mum, which impacted us. But she was never around. And then she found another guy and was like, kind of like in love, and rightly so. And like, do you think it was the same for you where like, because your mum was so busy on actually trying to survive, you were just like, okay, well, I'm in this like years of my life where I should be tailored into being a good human, but because my mum's so busy doing X, Y, and Z, I'm just going off the rails because no one's there to stop me.
That's 100% exactly what it was. And that's why I was so happy when my dad left, because it was like this release. The chains were unlocked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It allowed me I didn't go back to school, really. You know what I mean? I was like, my mum thought I was going to school. I wasn't going to school. You know, it was ridiculous. So, and it was interesting because, you know, after a period of time, then my mum met someone else.
Yeah.
And then she was so busy, new relationship, a job, you know, providing for us and everything else. And she physically couldn't like make sure that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. I was writing letters to the school, pretending to be my mum. Because my voice hadn't broken properly, I was phoning the reception at school. I was phoning the reception, pretending to be my mum, and saying, "Oh, he's not going to be in today. He's really not well."
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. I was getting away with all this stuff. It was so bad, and I was just released, and I was just like this crazy little kid. And really, for me, it was like 14 years old. I was like, I want to join the Royal Marines. I was at school. I was doing okay at school. And then all of a sudden, I just thought, what is the point in this? I could not understand the point of going to school.
Yeah.
I could not understand the point of learning maths. I could not understand the point of going to learning religious education, all this stuff. It just didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
So I then wanted to join the Marines.
I mean, I was the same. I mean, did you ever leave? I mean, was it what were your grades at the time? Was it like GCSEs or before GCSEs? It was like OSEs or whatever it was. What ones were yours that you had to do?
It was GCSEs.
Yeah, GCSEs.
Yeah,
so
I think so.
Did you not?
I tell you what happened.
Do you know what's funny? I failed everything, but I got a C in French. Like, apparently I spoke French better than English. That's like fucking
brilliant.
Yeah.
That's useful.
I know. And now everyone's like, so you speak French? I'm like, no.
Oh, it's the same for me. It was interesting because my dad had left. Because my dad had left, right? He was selling timeshares by that over in, I think it was Malta.
Yeah,
he was selling timeshares, and it was like he was always trying to be provide, and it was like do his bit, and you know it was always about going on holiday to where he was working, wherever he was working. He was like, right, next time I phone you up, make sure that you've got all the dates for your exams, and you can come out to Malta and you can revise. So I was like, I didn't bother finding out when the exams were. So when he phoned back next time to find out those dates, I made them up. As it turned out, I went out to Malta, and I don't know what was going on there, but I dyed my hair white, peroxide white. I had a great time on holiday, came back, and I was like, realised that I'd missed all my exams. apart from one, I thought I better go into school. Anyway, I went into school. It was maths exam. And as I went into the school, I walked in and everyone was like, Mr. Embry is looking for you. He's the deputy head. He's not happy. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going home. And that was it. I didn't even turn up for any exams.
Didn't even go to maths either.
None.
Yeah, I think, do you know what? I actually look back on my life and think one of the best things that ever happened to me was being really shit at school, because I just look at the people that actually went to school and did well. And it's like, I'm like, without kind of bragging, like I'm probably doing better than every single person I went to school. And I think because I wasn't groomed into thinking in a certain way, it allowed me to actually think what is actually physically possible. Because I just don't know what purpose school serves anymore.
We're not meant to be at school like that. We're not meant to. You imagine, right, what school does. People don't leave school. They leave that phase of their education. Then they go into a career, which is just a new school. You know what I mean? You've got a boss. You've got the same thing as the head. You've got the same system. So you are just being modeled for society, okay? And you look at the whole school system, which was invented by the Rothschilds to create factory workers. Now, you imagine when you go to school, you imagine anyone in life, right, that does well. What do? They get into flow. You imagine a gold medalist. What does he do?
Yeah.
These people still went to school, but they found a passion outside of the system that they loved. Every minute of their day was taken up by getting into flow with that one thing. Do you think they were doing that knowing that they would need this because they wanted to be an accountant as well? No, they were driven by exactly 100% what they wanted to do. Same with an entrepreneur, same with someone that stepped outside of that system. The system takes you from 45 minutes in this lesson, 45 minutes here, 45 minutes there, break, same thing in the afternoon, go home, do a load of homework. That is a system that really creating these factory working multitaskers. So you can never, or we're not trained to get into flow. This is why the majority of people, and this is like a pandemic, they can't finish anything they do. You look at humanity, right? Yeah. Anything. I look at my stepson at the moment, and I see everything in the house. It gets to a certain point, doesn't finish. Certain point, doesn't finish. And the fact of the matter, like everyone asks yourself, how many goals have you had that you completed? You're down to a very small percentage of everything you've ever aimed to do that you've completed. The knowing and the doing gap are so far apart. You know, we always want to achieve something, but from getting from here to here is people just can't do it. And that's because of the way we've been indoctrinated into this system that we're not meant for. You know what I mean? It's when you look at it and you can reflect on it like that. Yeah. You know what I mean? The schooling system is not there to create entrepreneurs, free thinkers, creative people. Did you ever hear about that study that they did at NASA to find an entrepreneur, to find a genius? And I'll probably get the numbers wrong here, but this is exactly what they did. NASA, of all people, right? They created this study. They wanted to find out what made a genius. I think it was a guy called George Lands. And basically, they went to do these tests on these kids, preschool, okay? And I think they were about 5 years old. Now, the way they define a genius is by giving them tasks to complete. And when they complete it in a creative way, that's a genius, okay? Now, when they did it, they had something like 80-90% of kids who were around about the age of 5 that passed that test and were a genius. They then went back 10 years later or 5 years later, did the same thing while they were at school. That went down to something like 30%. They then went on, and the higher these people got in age, the less that percentage went down. The study got kiboshed by NASA. They said they forgot about it. It wasn't working. So anyway, this George Lands went on and carried on doing it, and he did the same test with adults. When he got to adults, it was 93% of not having the ability. It was only like 10% ability to be a genius. Yeah. And it was all put down to a system that was learned. Being dumbed out was learned. It was a schooling process that had dumbed people down to, I think it was 2% actually. Wow. 2%. So by that whole system had then dumbed people down to 2%. So the bottom line is the fact we're all born as geniuses. But then we go through the programming system that then just numbs us down. And it's all about being creative. Yeah. It's that thing, don't look out the window. Stop looking out the window. Yeah. You know what I mean? But we want to look out the window.
Always being told that you're wrong or this and that and the other. And it just shapes your brain to, you know, it creates doubt. It creates doubt, and then
Yeah.
you get to the point where you think, oh, I don't really want to say that anymore because I think I might be wrong or whatever. And you're constantly doubting yourself and confidence and stuff. But I mean, because my cousin that I was telling you about with the kid that's really good at football, right? So he's taking his kids out for homeschooling. Now, you know, the government have started to basically say like they're going to fine parents for
In the UK, this is.
Yeah,
Yeah, they did it with us because we homeschool William. Yeah.
wild. It's just wild
Because they know they can't program them.
Yeah.
And this is the whole thing. It's like, you know, this programming, it's like that programming massively starts 0 to 7 is where you learn more than you'll ever learn your whole life. You know, and this is why the Jesuits have been telling their following for the last 400 years, give me a boy.
Who?
The Jesuits.
Okay, this is a world that I don't know about.
Well, the Jesuits, like, without going into that anyway, but but this is why they've been saying for 400 years, they've been telling their flock for 400 years, give me a boy until he is 7, I will show you the man. Now, the meaning of that is the fact that 0 to 7, as long as they can get someone from 0 to 7 in their programming system, that will define who they are as an adult. And you learn more in those years than you'll ever learn. So this is why they want those people at an early age to get them and then start to indoctrinate them into a program. A system, you know, because we're human beings, right? We're like a computer you buy from Curry's. You get it home, you put it on the counter, you plug it in, it turns on, doesn't it? But there's no programs. You can't do much with it.
Yeah.
It's waiting for all the programs to be installed. And at 0 to 7, we are waiting for those programs, okay? And those programs come in the form of TV. How many times do you go to a restaurant, you see a kid there with an iPad?
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You see a kid there with an iPad or give them the phone, and then they've got that now to cope with. They've got their environment, they've got the parents, they've got the siblings, they've got the schooling system. And all that, the kids are on constant record. You don't have an analytical mind at that age. So basically everything that's coming in is just you're on record. And I've been guilty as a father, you know, like say, oh, they don't understand, they're only kids. You're on constant record. So the things, and I even know now that a lot of the things that I'm not happy within myself, I know come from those early years, you know. So it's about, but understanding that we can change that is fundamental, and not thinking that we're just set in stone. And this is the thing, everyone thinks they're a victim of their genes, which is a load of rubbish. They think they're a victim of the past trauma. They think they're a victim of their environment. They think they're a victim of their upbringing. You can change it all. But you have to understand that there's this thing called neuroplasticity where we can change. Yeah. We can be who we want to be. And, you know, there's a number of mediums out there now, you know, when it comes to meditation, when it comes to practice, repeat, which is a very manual sort of way, the same way you learn how to drive, right? Remember that. Remember when you were sat in a car and you were like, personal experience, the guy sat next to me clearly didn't know, it was the hot summer's day, clearly didn't know what deodorant meant. Pungent is the best word I can describe it. And then you're in this car and you're like thinking, how the hell am I going to do this? Yeah. You know what I mean? You've got controls everywhere. Then you've got to move this box down a busy street with other cars doing the same. Your brain's on massive overload. Year later, you're driving down, this, again, personal experience, thinking you're cool as fuck. You've got the window down, you've got your shades on.
Not even paying attention to driving.
No. You're waving at people you don't even know. You've got your tunes on, everything you like, and you don't even know how you've got there. You know what I mean? You don't even think about it. What's happened? The thing that's happened is your body's learned to do something better than your brain ever could. You know what I mean? And that's exactly the same way as you train your brain now. Yeah. But the thing is, because it's clunky at the start and you have to go through that short-term discomfort,
a lot of people won't do it.
People turn away. And that's the way, and especially as we talked about before, we live in this Amazon society. It's like everything on demand, everything's so easy that people just don't want to put the work in.
Yeah. So the military then, so you always wanted to be in the military. Was there never anything else that you wanted to be?
No, not at all. It got to a point when I was 14, I was like that. I can remember the moment I stood up in class, when I was looking out the window, I was playing around, and I can remember that the teacher said, Ollerton, pay attention. And I just stood up, and I went, it's total fucking, I'm not paying attention to this bullshit. I'm joining the Royal Marines. And he just laughed at me, and he said, you'll never join the military. You haven't got the discipline. He was right, but I was going to do it anyway. Yeah. But when he said the discipline, it was like I did have the self-discipline. Yeah. I didn't appreciate discipline external of me. Yeah. But I was like, and also I'm going to do it.
Discipline from people you don't respect.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly.
That's a big thing.
Exactly. So a lot of that, you know, when it came to people, I was used to people telling me I couldn't do something. And that for me, there was a lot of people in my life saying you couldn't do it. For me, that was the best thing someone could do.
Yeah. Do you know what? This is what I'm saying. Like, mate, it's so fucking weird because I'm the exact same. People say you're not going to do this, mate. I would literally, like, I'd go to close deals and stuff like that. And they're like, there's no way you're going to close this. Fucking 4 weeks later, contract signed. And people who I used to work for at the time, they would literally play on that because they knew once they doubted me, bang, like it's not like there's no other way apart from
It's a red flag to a bull.
Have you ever kind of like found why that happens though? Because it is fascinating.
Mate. It's your ego. It's your ego that, you know, your ego is always looking to be loved, liked, defending you, everything. So really a lot of it, you know, sometimes it's a good thing and a bad thing because at the end of the day, it can push you into doing things that you shouldn't be doing. You know what I mean? And you're just doing it to prove someone else wrong. You know, so I'm glad I joined the military, right? But the thing is for me, you know, when I look back now, was it really for me? I don't know if it was the fact that I had so much trauma I brought into that environment that was still affecting me and that ruined sort of my time in the military, or the fact that I shouldn't have been there in the first place. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, now looking back, you know, sometimes we have to do things that, you know, I think a lot of it is we sit there in the moment and think, I'm not enjoying this, it's shit, and we don't think about the bigger picture, you know, especially as a young person, which is quite interesting because we are a race that we're forever digging up the past to create the future. We're forever fearing the future and we're not living in the moment. You know what I mean? So, but I always wanted to be in the military. It was like this, I am doing it. I just wanted to be at war. And this really, for me, is where, you know, the chimp created that. I believe that, you know, searching, this is what we do. We're looking for that external fix, but we don't realize it's something we've got to resolve here.
So how old were you when you joined the Marines?
18.
And how was the first experiences? Obviously, because when you're 18, because you can't join until you're like 17 and a half, right? So you're obviously...
Well, you can join when you're 16.
Okay.
Which I think is bizarre. I look at my stepson at the moment, who's 16 in a month's time.
And you think, yeah, there's no way.
You know what I mean? That he could be going to war.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what? That is ridiculous. And it's like... But for me, it was like I couldn't join at 16 because I had a criminal record. I could join, but I'd have to I'd have to submit that within my records.
So you had to wait for it to be cleared,
If I was it was a choice. If I waited till I was 18, I didn't have to submit the fact I had a criminal record.
Yeah, and you joined. And how was it when you first joined? Then, like, what was the environment like? What was the training? Because the Marines, I mean, you've gone on to do elite special forces. Most people see the Marines as like the hardest military to go to, right?
And that's why I joined. I wanted the hardest military sort of environment possible. So for me joining, I was loving it. I was lapping it. It was horrible. After, you know, for me, I always say this, right? Going from a civilian to a Royal Marine was a lot harder transition for me than going from a Royal Marine to a Special Forces soldier. Yeah. And because it was so severe, you know, it's such a different world. You know, like learning and being beasted physically. I'd never worked out like that in my life. You know, at the point where you just, I can't do any more, and then you expected to really pull it out of the bag.
Did you ever feel like just like pure fatigue, like non-stop?
Oh yeah, it was constant. You know, and you just thought so many times you were at like your lowest ebb, and you just had to just go like working on seconds, just go another second. I never had that kind of mentality before. You know, you go and do a gym workout, you've got to do this much, and you know, you smash it and you're knackered and everything else, you go on a run, same thing. But never had you got to, you know, for me, it's like the military is like, especially when it came to the special forces, they strip you mentally and physically of anything, so you've got nothing left. And then when you've got nothing left, they then say, now give me everything you've got. And having that mentality really, you know, that for me, honestly, understanding, going back to the chimp attack on that day, knowing that there's more in the tank, that really did help me in those moments. And that's why throughout my training, getting as a Royal Marine, I knew, I just saw myself at the end. I knew unless one of my legs snapped or something like that, injury or something, I knew I was going to be there. The same with Special Forces.
Did you find that you were quite emotionless up until those points? Like, because the reason why I asked that question is because I find that I can only feel emotion when I'm really punishing myself. Like when I'm in pain, it's almost like, okay, I'm human. You know, I'm actually like...
I can honestly 100% relate to that statement. And, you know, for me, I still struggle with it. I struggle with compassion as well, which is something I learned not too long ago in Costa Rica.
What happened?
I went to an ayahuasca retreat, and it was one of the biggest messages for me, compassion. And what happened when I went and did ayahuasca is the fact that I took the medicine. I then went somewhere I never expected to go, and that was back to the boy.
Really?
At the circus. And
literally that moment.
And it was terrifying. And for me, I realized what I've been doing, because the first night I went on this journey with ayahuasca, it was bizarre because I was there faced with the chimp, and you are there, you're literally there. Have you done ayahuasca?
Nah, I've always wanted to, but everyone says you've got to be in like a good frame of mind. Otherwise you can really go west.
Yeah, I mean, it goes to where it's needed, not where you want it. You know what I mean? So there was obviously, you know, there was a lot of places I could have gone that night, but this was the one that stood out. And I didn't really, when I went to see the shaman, I sat with the shaman, and he's like, and I'm good now, right, at this time, because I don't drink. I've got my life in order, just on the, you know, I've got the TV show going on, I've got a business. I'm the best shape of my life, you know, when it came to, you know, the bigger picture. So I'm like thinking, what do I want? And really for me, I was going because I thought this will amplify my business skills, and it will amplify everything I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I went to see the shaman. He said, you know, you have to set an intention. You sit with the shaman. And I went, and I was just grasping, you know, just pulling something from nowhere. I said, well, I'd really like to make sure that I don't press that self-destruct button again when something goes wrong in my life. And it was like, I felt shallow even saying it to him. And then I got up, and as I'm walking, and just as I'm half sort of stood up, I then said to him, and when I was 10, I got attacked by this chimp. And honestly, when I look back now, it's so funny because the look on the shaman's face, he just went, it was like, I know exactly where you're going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I was like just brushing it off, you know, because I thought, to me, I'd dealt with it.
Yeah.
I thought it was done. It was finished. There was nothing to address there. So going back there on that second night, and I went when they upped the dose after the first night. And
so you do it multiple times?
Yeah, we did I think it was four journeys. So the first one is just a tester, just a teaser, just to see how you react to it.
Yeah. And what happened on that one?
I just thought shit, it's not going to work. It's, you know, maybe it's me, and other people were going, oh, it's amazing. And I'm like, it's crap, it doesn't do anything. And it's like, mate, you know, this is going to be a waste of time. So the next night, they're like, does anyone want a little bit more? Then, you know, it's like, it's your choice. I'm like, yeah, give me so I'm like, anyway, like next thing, like half an hour after taking the medicine, I'm in this big Maloka in the jungle, and boom, and then all the geometry, you know, and then before you know it, you're actually there in, you know, I actually went down this corridor where there was loads of doors slightly ajar, and it was like there was so many different places I could have opened that door and gone down, but I was drawn to this one door, and the door opened, and I saw me at 10.
Wow.
Right down this corridor. And I was like, oh, no, I don't want, but, you know, I'll just go down there. And the whole thing with ayahuasca is surrender. You just got to
let it happen.
Yeah, surrender. Yeah. That whole thing, surrender, which for a special forces soldier is really tough to embrace. And it's tough to embrace to anyone because we're so set in our ways and our beliefs and everything else. Surrender is something that is not an easy thing to embrace. But then I was just like, just go to it. Anyway, I went into the next thing, I'm the boy. And I'm looking down at the chimp. And then all of a sudden I heard the roar that I heard on that day when I was 10. You know, as clear, as concise as it was on that day. And then I thought, you know, total shock started overtaking my body. And then something really weird happened because I had looked and I could see the chimp getting up. I thought, I'm going to get attacked. And then something happened in that moment. It all swapped around. And before you know it, I was in the chimp. And it was so real, Daniel, I tell you now, right, that because the chimp had been laid down, just lying down underneath the trailer on the grass, as I was getting up, I was now the chimp, I could feel the leaves falling off the hair on my back. I could feel my hair all starting to come up, and I could see me in front of my young baby chimp, and I could just feel this war inside of me just going mental. All my hair was just like standing up. And I would find out the next day I was roaring in this Maloka, like the chimp was roaring at me. Whoa. And I could even see it like there was this digital readout like Terminator going, looking at me, going, threat. And it was flashing. And it was like, wow. it was attack. And
so
it was
you
like,
felt everything. The
yeah,
chimp was
everything.
feeling?
And I was like, then I was in this like crouched position where my fists in the floor, roaring in this like Maloka, which we had a debrief the next day. They told me all about it. And then that happened. And then I didn't go through the attack. It kind of subdued. But straight away, those things that it taught me in that moment, for the first time in my life, I'd always looked at myself as the victim. And for the first time in my life, that took me away from being the victim and made me understand that I went into the chimp's arena that day. It didn't come looking for me. So that chimp was doing what any mother would do. And that then started to teach me so much compassion for the chimp. So much compassion. And then that then started to reflect all aspects of my life, because I realized how uncompassionate I am towards my wife and her with her son. And regardless of our relationship and our business and everything else, there's nothing more important to her than her son. More important than me, whether she says that or not, subconsciously and humanly, she's more, she'll protect William above me any day.
Yeah.
That's just, innate. So that then started teaching me compassion. It took me away from being the victim. It made me something much bigger. And that was really that journey. It was compassion. Anyway, the next night we took the medicine again. We had a debrief the next day. Everyone told me I was roaring like a crazy chimp.
Again.
Everyone was doing the crazy stuff. It was a wild place, you know what I mean? But everyone's in their own journeys. And in the middle of the jungle, you just hear, it's alive. The whole place is alive. Back in there that night, and I'm like, whoa, where are we going tonight then? Thinking I've got over the trauma. That's all good. Denying what really needed to happen. So I went back down the corridor, saw all these doors open, and then I'm drawn to this same door. And now I'm being pulled into this doorway, right? And I see me at the end again. And I'm like, no, I've dealt with that. I don't need to. I'm trying to get back. But I'm being pulled into this room, and my fingers are going down like a chalkboard, screeching down this very tight corridor. I'm going, no, I've dealt with that. I'm trying to get out. And it was pulling me back towards a child, back towards me at 10. Anyway, ended up back in me. And then this is when the attack went in. And
so you then experienced the
Then
attack.
I experienced the attack. And looking back now, whenever I'd remembered that situation, when the attack went in, it was horrible. It was horrific. I felt this terror that I've never felt ever in my life. That was the terror I felt on that
When
day.
you was experiencing, this is in the ayahuasca moment.
Ayahuasca, but it took me straight back to the energy of that moment when I was 10 years old. And honestly, it was that moment. I was screeching, I was crying, I was wanting my mum. It was horrible. It was horrible. And then in this moment when I was being attacked in this journey, I then all of a sudden, again, it's kind of freezed, and I heard this voice in my head say, "What would have happened if you'd not fought back that day?" And all of a sudden, it just stopped, and I lay down. And I can remember closing my eyes. I opened my eyes, and my wife's head is looking into my eyes, her beautiful blue eyes. And I just opened my eyes, looked at her, and I said, "Babe, don't worry, just come with me." And we both closed our eyes, and we went into the spirit world. We are no longer physical body, we're just spirit. And I went to this place that was just the sounds, everything. It was like, for me, now it was going back to source. And honestly, I was in this place, I didn't want to come back. I was no longer with my wife, we were just part of this. Like I say, we weren't physical. And then all of a sudden, while I'm just thinking, I'm never going back, I never want to go back, I heard this voice go, "They need you." And that was enough. I then came back into my body. And then honestly, I was only these sessions are 8 hours, and I'd only been in 3 hours. I thought I'd been there all night. It was like a lifetime in there. And I can remember in this Maloka, I stood up like this, and I was like to the shaman, "I've seen it. I know." I was like this revelation, this epiphany. And I went running out of the Maloka, and I shouldn't have done that. It's like I should have been in that environment. I went back to my room, and I was like, "Oh my God, I've seen where we come from." It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. And that, for me, I was like, then I got a pad out. I was like the Rain Man, like scribbling all this stuff down on this pad. And this one thing I did say on this pad was, "Pain screams the loudest when it's dying." And I love this comment because this is this is so powerful, because a lot of the time you imagine consider a relationship as an example, right?
Yeah.
At the point, the relationship's not working, you've got to separate, it's toxic, everything else. And in that moment where you're finally separating, that's when it screams the loudest. And you can just turn around, give that other person a hug, and put a Band-Aid on it. And it's the wrong thing to do, isn't it? Because it's going to come back. you're just kidding yourself. And really, for me, pain screams the loudest when he's dying. He's understanding that when that old world's falling away, you've got to really understand it's the birth of something new, and that's what we have to focus on.
Yeah.
You know, and it's been a lot of stuff in my life when stuff starts falling apart, and I want to go back and try and build it back together and make it right. But no, just push it away.
You just got to let it happen.
Yeah. And really, for me, when I go back, it's like when I went through that attack, when I came out of that, there was another thing I got from that night as well. Stop fighting. And that wasn't just like me going to war and stuff like that. That was stop fighting. I realized that all my life, relationships, work, the military, everything, I've been fighting against, everyone, which has been, I'm all for fighting for what you believe in, but it gets to a point where you're doing too much, and it's the only person that's losing out is you. You know what I mean? It's too much. So it was this stop fighting, and it was this compassion bit. So these were the biggest sort of learning points for me. I came back from that and I thought, right, I'm healed. Obviously I've done ayahuasca, this, that, and the other. And it wasn't until a year later I actually realized I wasn't healed because I was still not showing that much compassion.
Yeah.
Ayahuasca had shown me exactly where I need to look.
But you need to action that.
Yeah, I need to action it. I came away, it was like a year. And now I do, everywhere, I can recognize when I am fighting too much with something. And I say to myself, stop fighting. I can realize when I'm, with my wife, more compassion, other people. So it was a crazy experience, but one that I needed to do. But really for me, talking about that trauma, is I now realize that because I said I couldn't, every time I remembered that attack before I went to do the ayahuasca, I didn't hear any sound. There was no sound. It was just me and this chimp. I had this scrap with a chimp, blah, blah, blah. And the reason there was no sound is because there was no emotion. From that moment when I got attacked, I'd switched off all my emotional sort of openness, and I had no emotion, or a very limited amount of emotion, especially when it came to other people. And I realized the no sound was no emotion. And really going through that attack was opening up those gateways of that emotion.
Wow. I mean, I've always thought about it, but like listening to that there, I feel like those moments are really magical. Like, obviously, our mutual friend Cyrus, he went into a controlled environment with, I think, MDMA or something like that. And he said, mate, he goes, I could literally see so much in my life where it's just like, mushrooms, I think mushrooms anyway, but it was a controlled environment. He said these high doses of these psychedelics. And he was like, mate, he's like, you just, there's just so much that you see. There's like pent up inside that you just have to like really just allow it to come. Yeah.
I think there's so much. I mean, I went with a load of veterans with an organisation called Heroic Hearts Project. And the whole thing was the fact I was a veteran. There was 14 other veterans there. And they were just saying, look, like that work over the week we were there was like having
a million therapy sessions.
It was just, it just unlocked so much for them. So, it's plant medicine is, I believe nature provides. I believe we provide. We are our own best pharmacy. You know what I mean? We don't need all these pharmaceuticals. We have the ability to heal, to self-heal. And I think this is where people are missing out in life. If someone, I say this, right, if people are on this forever quest to understand who they are, and I know this is a lot to take in, but we are self-healing, self-regenerating energy systems capable of creating our outside world through internal thought. That is who we are. So the more we don't have to sit there trying to find this, we haven't come here to discover, we've come here to create. Do you know what I mean? But unless you understand the complexity and the awesomeness of who we are, you're caught in this system which they call the matrix, and you go from A to B not really understanding anything about life, not really achieving anything. We're sold this dream that you're going to work all your life for this utopia at the end, when at the end of the day we should be living that utopia every day. And it's this we're sacrificing utopia every day because one day we're going to achieve it at the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny, isn't it? Because when people actually get to that point, most of them die within a couple of years anyway.
Yeah, and that's how brilliant the system is, isn't it? You stop working, all your health issues because you haven't looked after yourself, you've disregarded yourself.
Start to show their
and then before you know it, you sit down and not do anything. As long as you get it right, the stress, if you have when you have the right amount of stress, it switches on the immune system.
Yeah.
And when you have too much, it compromises the immune system. But having no stress at all is also detrimental. And this is why people, they finish their work. My auntie was the same. You know, she finished her working career, done her service, extension on that as well. And then a couple of years into it, and then died. You know, it's so sad.
Do you have, after having that spiritual experience, do you like, because this is one thing I talk about a lot and people just like literally kill me for it, because I'm just like, I always say like, what, just like we die and then we all become spirits and just like, yeah, go into this afterlife. I never thought that this is a thing. I hear stories like this and I think maybe this is a possibility, but do you now believe that there is like this afterlife where once you die, you'll just literally go into a spirit and go on to your next purpose?
I 100% believe that. It's took me a long time before I accepted that. Obviously, the ayahuasca experience really cemented that. Yeah. But for me, I do believe we are spirit having a human experience. I honestly believe that. And, you know, this is just a vessel. That's honestly what I believe. And when you die, you go back to source.
Wow.
That is as far as this whole thing they call energy that people...
I hope it, do you know what? I really do hope that it's true, because I feel like, you know, like, for example, when I lost my cousin last year, like one of the things that I wish, like, even though I'm not religious or spiritual in any shape or form, one thing I hoped was, because she passed young in her life, that she could just go to be with Nan, Granddad, and the people that have obviously passed. And you just hope that that's something that does exist, you know? But who knows if it does.
But who knows? Yeah. You know, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, you know, with everything...
But I think it gives you more peace internally.
Yeah.
When you feel this way, I think you feel like peaceful about everything.
Daniel, we're the only species on the planet that knows it's going to die. And the system uses that against us. And the fear of death is the one thing that brings you closer to it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? A lot of people give themselves ill health because they fear death all the time. And the more you think about anything, the bigger it becomes. You know, this is the thing, what you focus on, you feed. Yeah. You know what I mean? This is the whole thing when it comes to, we've been sold this rubbish as well, that, you know, we are victims of our genes. You know, if my uncle had cancer, my auntie had cancer, then I'm going to get it. And it's actually the thought of getting cancer that's going to give it to you. Yeah. The whole thing when it comes to, like, we have got about 98% of all diseases, ailments and everything already in us. And it's the fact that when our immune system is compromised, that's when the disease gets in. Yeah. And really the bottom line for that is stress. You know what I mean? And we live in a system where we are, the majority of society, you know, by switching your phone on first thing in the morning, news app flashing up, it's never good news. You know, stress. You are belt-fed stress. You've got the financial pressures, you've got everything else. We are on this super high stress level. And first of all, you can't create when you're stressed. And secondly, no organism can live in a healthy state under a permanent state of stress. You're in survival mode. But it's the way you can control a society. Yeah.
So I'd love to take it on that journey, but I want to kind of take it back a little bit.
Shoehorn it back in.
We're going to go on an extreme conversation here, but I just want to touch base very quickly on you. So you passed the Marine training. Where was the first place you served?
The first place I went to was Northern Ireland. And
that was back in the day when it was like the IRA and...
Yeah. I mean, it softened down a little bit then, but it was still volatile. You know, it's like... I always say it like I was 19, I just turned 19. And for me, it was like, that was my first look at war. They called it a conflict. When people shoot at you, I call it a war, wherever you are. It's a conflict.
How do you feel on Shakeside Road?
I tell you what, conflicts when you have an argument with someone in Starbucks or something. You know what I mean? When people are shooting you, it's a fucking war. Yeah. It's a war. So, that was a big eye-opener for me. None of that was in the brochure. I mean, a lot of the stuff I joined for this. I had a military family anyway. My granddad was in the military.
Knew what you were getting into, yeah.
And there was this sense of, you know, this loyalty to the crown and all that kind of old rubbish. But for me, I got there, and that was a big wake up call. I grew up pretty fast. Yeah. In that time, because you are a boy.
What was the moment that made, like, where you look? Because obviously you're going there, you land in, you're probably thinking to yourself, I can picture you probably being like, yeah, I'm a fucking Marine, walking through like, yeah, I've got this. And then there's a moment. And what was the moment that made you realize, oh shit, like this is serious?
I think the first time we got there, I mean, even just on the first night we arrived, you know, they had got the dates mixed up. We moved in. We were supposed to be in this checkpoint. I mean, out there in Northern Ireland at that time, you know, if you had a green beret or a red beret, you had a big price on your head, you know. So, and when you get into country, you know, on the ground in Northern Ireland, they want to welcome you. Back in those days, anyway. And you know, there was a massive bomb that had gone in. I think they'd handcuffed the guy to the steering wheel of a vehicle. They had his family at home saying, if you don't drive it in, we're going to, you know, kill your family. As we found out afterwards. But and then they thought we had actually taken over by that time, and they'd obviously through their intelligence got the dates mixed up. Anyway, we straight in there, called straight out on the QRF helicopters out there. And I can remember then, like, getting on the ground, and one of the guys, like, who'd been to Northern Ireland a few times, it was like mayhem everywhere. And one of the guys kicked a helmet and said, we need to see if we can find any more of these. And I was like, what, a helmet? And there was a head in the helmet. Mm-hmm. And, like, you know, seeing that kind of stuff, it's like, you know, that was a big wake-up call. And then that, you know, although you kind of love it, you know, when the call goes in to get out there, you're like, yes, bring it on. You know, the reality of it in the moment is a little bit, it's very different to what you expect. And really for me, when I got there, I realized, I don't know why it was for me. I don't know what it was, but after doing all these different sort of missions, if you want to call it wasn't even missions, you know, things we had to go out, tasks, if you want to call them that, out on the ground, I just had this thought that came in my head, and I was thinking, these missions aren't real. We're bait. I was like thinking, we're bait on the ground, so that the only way, if nothing's going on, it's the worst thing that can happen for the intelligence services, because they've got nothing to go on. Yeah. So really, I felt that we would just bait on the ground so that the IRA would come and attack, and then they'd be able to build up the picture from there. But it was at that point I felt kind of like a bit like cannon fodder. And I was like, nah, this ain't right. This is not where I want to be. This is not what I expected. So yeah, and it was 6 months of a very active tour. I think they tried 19 times to kill one of us. They didn't kill any of us. And there were some close calls, some big close calls.
What would you say was the closest call?
Not necessarily for me. I mean, but the lads on the ground, there was a whole unit on the ground. But, you know, there was times when there was an attack on one of the checkpoints as well, you know, and there was bullets going down, but none of our guys got injured at all, and no confirmed kills on the other side. We didn't know, but you know, it was close scrapes here and there. I mean, for me, it wasn't. I didn't really have anything of that, you know, where I thought, wow, that was a close one. Yeah. You know, but you know, certain lads that were involved with some of the bombs and stuff like that. You know, I can remember one lad got blown. He was near a device, and it blew him so far off, and it actually bent the barrel on his rifle. It was that powerful, but obviously he got the right way of the blast wave that kicked him out of the way. But a step in the other direction, it could have been fatal. But Jesus. You know, all things like that. But I think actually just being in a war zone is enough. You know what I mean? It's enough to play with your mind, and it puts you on that heightened sense of emergency, and it's not a good place to be for anyone.
Yeah, and after that tour, then you're obviously discovering that this is like a place you don't want to be. But
I didn't want to be,
but you're still enjoying the chaos or searching for the chaos.
Yeah, and this is one thing I'd like to say about that. You know, one thing they teach you to be at comfort, to be at comfort in chaos. You know what I mean? This is half the problem when you leave. But, you know, after that, we came back home, and then it was when we were on leave, we got recalled to go out to Operation Desert Storm. And again, we didn't really see loads out there, but, you know, some of the stuff we did see was quite, you know, because we were called in to, like, get into the mountains to go and rescue, like, the Kurds and everyone bringing back down from the mountains. And some of the atrocities of things we saw in the mountains were just...
What had happened? You say the mission was Desert Storm, but was it just... this was during what year?
This would have been 1991.
Oh, wow.
1991. I was
2 years old.
2 years old. Yeah. Wow. 1991 it was.
And this was the first time, like, Saddam Hussein had, like, basically kicked off, right? Because he'd done it a few times.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, that for me, it was when I actually came back from that. You know, we went into some villages where some people had been massacred, and it's body parts and stuff. But it was just like not the kind of thing you want to see. You know, it's like that stuff, regardless of whether you think about it or not, has an everlasting effect on who you are as a person.
I'm sure there's traumatic things that you see that doesn't matter about whatever work you do. You will never be able to unsee it, right?
No, exactly. And even if it's gone from your conscious mind, it's in your subconscious. You know what I mean? So, So there's stuff, but when I came back from there, it was like I just wanted to be at war every day.
Yeah.
And this was the thing for me. I was like, I need to be at war every day. This is not. I wasn't getting enough of it. Got so close to Northern Ireland, then I got to Iraq. I wanted to be in I wanted to be in absolute, fighting every day, and it's like something that wasn't coming.
What was it? I mean, obviously, there's we spoke about stuff, talking really openly here. So I don't know if you want to talk about this or not, but do you remember the first time you actually killed someone?
You know what? No, I don't. And to be honest, look,
is it because it's just a blur?
No, the only time I really did was outside of the military. When I was in the military, right? There's a lot, but people have this conception, right? Special forces guys, that everyone's killed someone, that everyone's like been knife to knife, plowing daggers into throats and things like that. And a lot of time, it doesn't happen that way. A lot of the work that the special forces do anyway is reconnaissance, so the enemy don't see you. If you are like doing hand-to-hand stuff, things have gone a bit pear-shaped.
So you're kind of shooting at distance, yeah?
Yeah, shooting at distance, et cetera. Unless you're actually a sniper, for instance, or something like that, whose job it is to take people out. And to be honest, I didn't, throughout my, and I'm very happy about this now, throughout my career as a Special Forces soldier, I made sure that I wanted to be on the counter-terrorist wing all the time, okay? Because the one thing that happened to me in 1980 was being attacked by that chimp, right? But it was also the time that I saw the SAS storm the Iranian embassy, and it was for everyone to see on national TV. It was an interesting year for me, and that was planted the seed. So from that, I then made sure I was on the counter-terrorist wing. I was waiting for the embassy to go down all the time again in the UK. So I wasn't in your conventional type of green role, which is more the sort of your Afghan type role and Iraq type role. I was on the counter-terrorist wing. Our responsibility was that was sort of the maritime security around the UK and everything else. We did some stuff overseas, but honestly, it was around that time before the Iraq stuff, before Afghan, and it was pretty quiet. You know what I mean? This war that I wanted to be in, I still wasn't fighting. I wasn't being shot at. I wasn't plowing daggers into people's throats. And you know what? Now, although I wanted that then, I'm so glad that didn't happen, because my whole perspective on war and everything has changed so much. Yeah. And for me, actually, the time that I did actually think, and I still don't know if I actually killed someone, was when I was in a firefight as a mercenary, as a contractor.
Was this the young Arab kid?
Yeah, young Arab kid that I looked into the eyes before I pulled the trigger, you know what I mean? And it was like I was this far away from him. I was looking into his eyes.
Do you know what? When I was listening to your book, one of the things I read the book and I listened to the book, but what I found when I listened to the book was like I felt it so much more. Like when you were talking about looking at him in the eyes and you could see the whites of his eyes, mate, I literally was imagining. Like I could just see it in my head, and it was just like such a powerful moment where you're just like, wow.
Yeah, because you live through the audio. I mean, audio books are great for that, because you live in the energy of the moment, because it's a story, because the words you're hearing are creating images in your head. And that's where you are, aren't you? You're seeing the whites of the eyes. And it was in that moment when I can remember that moment was so slow, but it was so fast. But it was the slowest moment of my life. And I was just praying, this one thing that, this is the one thing that I've been praying for all my life to happen.
And then when it arose, you didn't even want to do it.
I hated it.
Yeah.
I hated it. And actually having to pull that trigger and knowing it, I almost looked at him and thought, you don't want to be here, just like I don't want to be here. And it was this moment I'm looking at him, trying to like telepathy.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at him saying, I don't want to do this, mate. Please don't point that at me. I don't want to do this. And his weapon was coming down onto my head. I'm doing 130 kilometers in a car while I'm driving it. Yeah. As I'm raising my weapon up onto my arm, I shouted, stand by to open fire. But his weapon was coming onto my head. And it was a case of kill or be killed. And at that moment, I rested the weapon here, blasted through the window, sprayed a burst into the car. And I don't know. I hope I didn't.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't kill him. But it did what it needed to do on that day, and I got away from it. And, although, I've thought about that a lot, the one thing, and again, like I said to you when we had a conversation at the start, it's about understanding there was 13 people, including my number 2 that day, that might not be here today if I'd not done that.
Yeah.
So that's what I hold on to.
So you have to, I mean, it's a very unique way of looking at it, right? Because, again, it was like my mum always talks about how I look at my life, and it's always like, although I do suffer with some negative thoughts at time to time, but I'm always quite an optimistic person, and I kind of have to find the positive in everything that I do, and I think this is probably something that you adopt as well.
That's such a gift to be able to do that, because the way that we're programmed, I mean, I'm kind of struggling with this with my stepson at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's not his fault. It's the fact that we are programmed to look for the faults.
Yeah.
It's like you look at diamonds, for instance. What defines a good diamond and a bad diamond? The bad diamond's got flaws in it. So we're almost looking everything that has it's like a car. You won't define it as absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Unless you're always looking for the flaws before you can say that it's an absolute. You're looking at something and going, wow, that's amazing, because you can't find a fault. It's like you see like you've had conversations with mates, and you're like, drop dead gorgeous girlfriend, and you're like, why are you not with her anymore? It's like, mate, she had a funny toe. And you're like,
so true, though. It's so true.
You know what I mean? But we are that, we're searching for the faults, we're searching for the problems. And unless we don't recognize that and understand that we've got to look for the silver lining, we are going to be addicted to the problem. That's a survival mechanism. Look for the bad, and I laugh about this because it was so funny. I bought out my 5th book, which was How to Survive Almost Anything. And sometimes I need a bit of a kick up the arse when it comes to social media, about putting posts on and stuff. My book was coming out. My wife was like, you need to put something on. And I was like, oh, for God's sake, I was busy. It was a hot summer's day in the UK. I had my shorts on, that become relevant. And I said, just take it now then. So she gave me the book. She recorded. I was like, get the book. It's brilliant. This, that, and the other. Blah, blah, blah. And I said, there you go. And she put it on Instagram for me. She came back to see me. She said, look at that. So I'm looking at this post, right? And I'm going through my phone. I'm going, oh, look at all these comments. Oh, that's nice. Ollie, I loved your last book. I can't wait to get all this stuff. And I'm loving it. I'm having this proper ego stroke. I'm loving myself because everyone's giving me so much love. I get down to this comment and I'm like, and honestly, my heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. I'm going red. I'm like starting to shake. And my wife's like, what's up? What's wrong? I said, I can't believe it. And this hand of doom is coming over, trying to press something. I said, look at this comment. Look at this comment. And this one comment on there said, Ollie, have you forgot to do leg day?
So all the comments gone.
All that good, all that love, all that amazing stuff. And I'm like, mate, I was, oh, fuck. And I'm trying to retaliate. My wife grabs my hand. She says, sleep on it. Sleep on it. I need to retaliate.
Yeah,
and I was like, for the next, honestly, it felt like hours on end. Yeah. I was coming up with all the comments that I could use to retaliate against the one person. And in the end, I went, what are you doing? Now, this is what we do, right? We can let one little thing, and this is the way that we're wired. Focus on the bad, because that's the one thing that's the threat to us. Not in this day and age so much, but that's back in the day. You've always got to look for what's going wrong. And it's this, you imagine as well, this is really important, that you get up in the morning, as soon as you wake up, you have a shot of cortisol. Right, and this is why in the morning I still feel it. I wake up some mornings, I'm like, oof, I've got to worry about that. I've got to worry about that. And that really is your survival instinct. It wants to remember everything you should fear from the day before.
Yeah.
So we're forever living in a cycle of the past, and that then creates our future, which if you allow that to dictate who you are, will end up being quite a boring life.
Yeah, I have found that actually. It's very interesting you say that, because sometimes I wake up in the morning and the first thought is like, almost like a negative thought sometimes. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and you have to really like...
I have it every day.
Yeah. So I actually, it's funny you say this, because obviously I don't know, maybe this is probably, some of the feminists are going to hit me for this, but I think as a man, you're quite hot-headed at times. And weirdly, this is so random, but I actually bought an ice bath. one of the motorized ones, so I can set it so it's cold for when I wake up.
I've got mine coming, shipping container.
Oh, mate. So
it's here on Saturday.
So what I love about ice baths is that it's really enabled me to stress less. Because, you know, when you think about it, you get put in that cold environment and it's fucking freezing. Like your brain is saying you can get out at any time, but you breathe through it, pain goes. And then next thing you know, you realize, well, actually, if I just breathe through this situation, I'm okay in 30 seconds. Pain's gone. It's numb. My body's adapted. And that's actually like anybody, I think, listening that really struggles with stressful environments or situations, buy an ice bath. It sounds so weird, but it's generally helped me in those situations to be calm.
100%. You know what? This is the thing, right? This is what I couldn't stand. I mean, first of all, when it came to the ice bath stuff, I was like, if I see anyone else on social media jumping in an ice bath, I'm going to eat my phone. I was sick of seeing it. And then, then a company, Brass Monkey, sent me a beautiful ice bath. They're really expensive. And it was like, I don't know why I asked for it, but I did. And they sent me a free one. Wow. So anyway, I then said, right, Jan, it's the 1st of Jan. I don't drink anymore. So I was asking everyone to do this dry Jan campaign I was running. I was thinking, I've got no discomfort myself. So I thought I need to do something every single day. So I went, right, you need to get in the ice bath every single day. And honestly, what a powerful thing, because, and this is, forget the ice bath, right? My brain was saying to me before getting in there, like initially I used to do a minute. But my brain is like, no, you can't do that. There's no point doing it. You've got things to do today. You haven't got time. What? You haven't got time. You haven't got 1 minute to sit in an ice bath. And the thing for me, over 14 days, it started to change. And I was like thinking, every time I got that negative in my head, say, well, how would you feel if you never did it today then and just forgot it? And it was like, my head was like, no, I need to do it every single day. Now, forget the ice bath. What are you doing? You're sacrificing the comfort of the present moment for the greater good in the future. Yeah. That is the key to discipline. Yeah. And if you can do that in the ice bath, where else do you think you can do it?
You can do it in every area. And
everywhere.
And especially if you do it first thing in the morning. I always said to people, like when I do it, they're like, why'd you do that? I'm like, because it's just like, if you can actually get through that in first thing in the morning, it actually sets you up really well to just go on and do other things which are difficult, but you get through it because you know you can.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I just feel it's so powerful. And it's just like, it doesn't have to be the ice bath. There's so many things that I run programs where it's like, stick with this habit tracker for 30 days. Like one of those things on the habit tracker, I mean, people think, oh my God, I'm going to have to do like a crazy military SAS workout and I'm going to kill myself. It's not. I tell people, right, when you wake up in the morning, instead of having a coffee, wait 60 minutes. Can you do that for 30 days? Oh, I could never not have a coffee. You can't not have a coffee because the little brat who's still 7, that first 7 years of your life, is screaming, saying, I want a coffee. At the end of the day, it's not you that needs a coffee. It's your beliefs and your programming that needs the coffee. Yeah. And it's so powerful. Like, don't have a coffee and why would you do that? Because it messes up your circadian rhythm. Yeah. You're using a drug to basically stimulate you, to tell you need that to wake up. So really, I run these like mini habits about, not having your phone an hour before you go to bed. So, or any screen device. Could you do that for half an hour? And we're all guilty of it. I have to fight against it, taking my phone to bed. Last thing you see is that you put it on the side, airplane mode, hopefully. But, doing that, it releases serotonin in your brain, tells your brain that it's daytime. You don't sleep properly. Yeah. And all these things. Can you do it for 30 days? And once you start doing these little tiny habits and you start to habit stack, when it comes to doing the big stuff, that takes care of itself. Yeah. But what we end up doing a lot of is we're like, I need a goal, so I'm going to aim for this thing that's so overwhelming that we never actually get traction on it. Even when we do, we get bored and, lose our way a bit because it's too tough. But if you do that habit stacking each and every day and start to build those disciplines that really put the 5% creative ability up here in charge of the 95% program, that's when we start to win. Yeah. So the ice bath is perfect for that.
What type of habits so obviously you did the Marines, but I mean, when we talk about the SAS and the SBS, right? What makes them so elite?
What makes the SBS and the SAS so elite is the fact that they're prepared to do anything to get the job done. It's about creating a group of leaders that will think outside the box and they will do the impossible. to get stuff done. They've got such a winning mindset, you know. And I think really for the special forces, especially the UK, it's the fact that we will come from a direction that the enemy would never think possible, you know. And it's about creating a strong group of men that are all pioneers, not just leaders. They're all pioneers that will do anything to get that job done, you know, and we'll push that extra mile, you know. And I really, you know what I say about this, right? I think when I think about this, a massive thing in our favour was human incompetence. It wasn't just the fact that we were good at what we did, it's just the fact that we knew humanity was absolutely pathetic. You know what I mean? So you could go to a camp where there's a load of sentries looking after that camp. You knew they'd often be asleep. You know what I mean? That's just an example, but you know what I mean? It's human incompetence that is your best asset.
What were some of the examples then, let's say, from one of the, like, I don't know, missions that you did where it was like you really, like, you thought outside of the box, where it was literally just like nobody would have thought about this?
I don't know. I can't recall.
Yeah, because the reason why I ask is because I was doing some research about the SBS, and I saw this one, like, basically blog about it, because people were asking questions on, like, Reddit about the SBS and stuff. And one guy put in there, they go in when bad things need to happen. But, like, was it that bad?
What do you mean?
Like, as in, like, were you literally just called up when really bad things needed to happen?
No, not necessarily. It was just like, well, I mean, when the shit hits the fan, you know, it gets to a certain point, then they bring in the special forces. It's like a terrorist situation. They get to a certain point where they just go, right, we need to hand over to the special forces because it's getting really bad. You know, people are starting to get killed and stuff like that. So there is an element of that. For sure. But I mean, just generally thinking outside of the box, you know, the way you do stuff, you know, and just, you know, it's even like when you go on Special Forces selection, you look at some of those mountains and the human mind goes, you can't do that. It's fucking ridiculous. You know what I mean? You can't pass that. You can't climb that mountain. You can't do it in that time. But it's being able to cancel that out and saying it can be done. And one thing I'll say is, like, they teach you to live in that 1 meter square. So when all hell is let loose, when hell is raining, you know, chaos is reigning, you pull everything back to 1 meter square and you work within that 1 meter square. You switch off the outside environment and you keep moving forward. And you imagine a team of people doing that when you're not allowing something external over you to control you. And that really, for me, is like going through that training, that does create a special mindset. It doesn't create, I mean, you've got to have some fundamentals already as a person to pass Special Forces selection, but you know, it really does create that strong. Like when I was in the military, right, and when I was doing those dive ops and things like that, you know, we specialised in diving, so we would use diving to, like, get to target. We would only, like, be 3 meters under on a rebreather, so no bubbles. But honestly, it was like, even when we got onto target and stuff and moving around the target, it was like telepathy, mate. I've never felt anything like it. So it's almost like, you know, you would see an area that was exposed and think, fuck, I'm exposed there. And next thing, one of your mates would be there. It was this, like, it was like synchronicity. Like I took it for granted.
It's like strategy on steroids.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And like, even like, you know, you can't communicate, well, you didn't back in my day anyway, you can't communicate underwater. Not like you see in Hollywood where everyone's chatting away and stuff, you know, you dive to target. And it's just like, there's just this connection. It's just incredible. I've never felt that since.
Well, and then when because obviously for anyone that's listened to your book, like, it wasn't just like you left and everything was fine. You were obviously dealing with a ton of trauma, which then led to alcohol, lots of drinking and stuff. So, and then you went on to start your own private security company. And I think there's one, I mean, I know you talk about this a lot, but it's such a crazy story. It's chaptered as the road to Baghdad. Just take us back to that moment of the road to Baghdad.
You know what? The reason why I tell this story, and because it was a monumental change in me that really, it would help me later in life. And that's the only reason I tell the story. But the fact of the matter is, and like when I got out to Iraq as a contractor, as a mercenary, the shit hit the fan a lot more than it did when I was in the military. You know what I mean? And you had a lot less manpower. And around this time, like, we were doing these infrastructure projects. I worked for ABC News initially. And the road to Baghdad was when I was it was the time the statue came down in Firdos Square. The Americans came in, they liberated or invaded. They don't know the difference really, but sorry.
That's it. Yeah, it's very true. It's very true.
Team America moved in, and basically it was like, there was this perception that the whole thing had finished. It was like the security level had dropped, and et cetera, et cetera. And due to that, because we were so expensive, and rightly so, you always look to offload the manpower, because it's a massive expense. Yeah. And for people in my profession, your value is only really appreciated when you're tested. You know what I mean? We're the kind of people that our job is to make sure nothing happens, which, sometimes you need something to happen to justify your position. Anyway, so this time, ABC News, they were like, I was the team leader there. They were like, right, we're going to swap the whole team out, the ABC team, all the crews, everything. We need you to facilitate the move. And I was like, right, give me the details. And I got the details. And it was like, right, I need to send a team to get the new lot from Jordan. And it was like the road from Jordan to Baghdad. There was no flights because of the surface-to-air missile threat. And I had to sort of manage this move. And I was like, how many can I take? I was thinking, I've only got 6 anyway. He said 2. I was like, 2? You got? I was like, because the money was in control, I was like, I didn't want to upset the status quo. I was like, okay. But it was the wrong way round. 12 people and 2 security. It should have been the other way round. Mm. And the thing is, because they were on the ground, they were thinking that the whole thing was, coming to a close, as in the threat. We knew that this was just the start. And as we know now, it was just ramping up. It was just starting to ramp up. We knew that. We knew there was going to be consequences. So I then put myself forward for the job, because I wanted to look the new guy in the eye and tell him he was making a big mistake. So anyway, we ended up going on this journey, 2 of us in this soft-skin vehicle. That means bullets come through the side. And all the way there, I am thinking of all the words I can say to this guy. I'm going to look this guy in the face and I'm going to say, look, you're making a big mistake. There's going to be consequences. And when there's money involved, people always see that as your motive.
Yeah.
Which there was a little bit of that because I was earning some decent money for the first time in my life. But anyway, I was just thinking these words nothing I could say would really justify it. Like him go, you know what, Ollie, you're right. We're going to keep the team on full commitment. So anyway, then I started doing what I really got in trouble at school for, being really creative. And I started thinking about all the things that could happen that would justify our position and keep the whole team in check. So I was actually going down this road at that time. It was, on the way to Jordan. I was passing through Ramadi and Fallujah, which was still a little bit of a place that you were advised to be careful. And as I'm going through, I just started to imagine, dreaming at the wheel, like number 2's in the car, just dreaming. And I'm smiling to myself, just thinking, wow, imagine if this happened. And I'm just seeing like the other side of the road. I'm coming down there and there's this big firefight. And I'm getting lost in this dream. I had a long time to think. It was 12 hours in a car. Mm-hmm. And I'm lost in this dream. And so much so, I'm getting to so much detail that I can smell the cordite from the bullets. That's the gunpowder. As the bullets are all going off, I can smell that. I can hear the sounds. It's this big firefight, everything's happening. And we get out, and I'm imagining this in my head and I'm going through all these details. But when I'm doing it, right, whether I was doing it consciously or not, I'm engaging all of my senses. So touch, smell, the things I smell, the things I see, the things I hear, all these things are engaged. I'm living that moment.
Yeah.
Do that and then get to Jordan anyway. So we were in the bar and I said to my number 2, the job was the next day. I said to my number 2, I said, oh, mate, let me tell you what's got to happen tomorrow. I said, we need to get attacked. And he looks at me like I'm a madman. And I was like, I got my beer. I said, imagine this. So I then start describing it to him, and all of a sudden he's starting to think, this happens and that happens. We're both in this energy. And we're both starting to talk about keeping that continuous amount of money and where we're going to go and all these things. And it's like, brilliant. And we're like, after the attack, we're going to get back to the compound. The doors are going to open. There's going to be this hero's welcome. There's going to be champagne, everything, and we could taste the champagne. We could feel the bubbles going down our throat. And then we're going to keep the contract. It's all going to be great. Anyway, that all happened. And then we had another beer, went to bed. Woke up in the morning, so tired. We're just thinking about the job. Anyway, to cut a long story a bit short, You know, we finally get all the cars together. There's 4 cars with the car at the back. All the 12 ABC news crews are all in the front. And then we head off on the road. And this is sometime later. I'm driving the car as we're about a few hours away from Baghdad. And honestly, I was driving along, been driving for ages. There's not much on the road. And all of a sudden, I can remember I woke myself up because my head hit the steering wheel. I was like, shit. You know, the last thing I wanted was a bloody... crash.
Yeah.
So I then start to fire up a bit of energy with number 2 and like, hey, mate, you know, when we get back, let's have a debrief. And then I'm going to the gym and then I'm going to get my head down straight away. And it just spurred up a bit of conversation. And I'm sort of looking over my shoulder. And as I turn, I look, and there's something flashing in the rear view mirror. Mate, get your eyes on the back. There's something behind. Anyway, something's flashing and we knew it was a car. I didn't think anything of it.
Is it nighttime?
It's dusk. It's around about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I didn't think anything of it. And I'm like thinking, well, it's probably the military. It's probably a security company. It's someone just wanted to get past. So I thought I need to get the cars over out the fast lane into the next lane over. And
how's the road? Is the road like an actual road? Or?
No, it's like an actual motorway. So you've got your central reservation. That's on my left-hand side. We're in the fast lane. We've got 3 more lanes to our right-hand side.
Wow.
And there's like burnt out cars all along and this, that, and the other. So anyway, as we're going, he starts to get eyes on. He says, right, this looks like there's 1 to 2 cars. It's coming up really fast. And he said, it's not a military vehicle. So I thought, all right, it's just, another security company or probably special forces or something. So I'm thinking, I just need to get the whole convoy over. I thought I'd get on the comms. Anyway, before I know it, these things are really close. These cars are really close. So we're going to have to do something really quickly. And then I got a message from the guy in behind that I didn't want to hear. And that was the fact that it clearly wasn't the military. It wasn't the security company. And for whatever reason, all these blacked out windows, they'd obviously brought the windows down, light had shone in, and we could see the headdress. We realized in that moment we were in the shit. And it wasn't. They were after us. And anyway, that was then confirmed by AK-47s coming out of every window. And I'm looking in my rear view mirror seeing this, and I start to shit myself. And the reason I say that, not literally, but the reason I say that is because I've never shit myself like that before in my life, apart from the chimp. And in that moment, I'm like starting to panic. And I'm starting to think then of all the things that could go wrong. I'm starting to think of all the intelligence reports we'd had from previous where the cars had been brought over to the side of the road, heads chopped off, all kinds of atrocities. I'm starting to think of all the responsibility I'm feeling for the people in front that are relying on me for their safety. And I'm going to a flat spin. I've never been there before. It's absolutely horrible. But then something happened that snapped me out of that. It could have sent me the opposite way, but it snapped me out of that. And that was, they started shooting. And that sound of AK-47s going off, when you're being shot at, like 1's intimidating enough, but when you've got 8 going off, it's like a crescendo from hell.
Yeah.
But that did something to me. All of a sudden, it snapped me into that special forces mode. And I realized exactly what I had to do in that moment. I took a breath like I hadn't been breathing for the last minute or so. And all of a sudden, as soon as I did that, I got clarity up here. I realized in that moment, I had to forget about the responsibility of the people in front. I had to forget about all the things that could go wrong. I had to focus on one thing, and that's the people shooting at us. And not even thinking, I just took the vehicle straight over to the next lane over, told my number 2 to stand by as I lifted my little submachine gun up to my arm. And then as soon as that vehicle went into the gap that was next to us, when I'm looking down into that boy's eyes and the AK-47s are coming onto our heads, I give the order to open fire. And then a big, massive array of bullets went down, a lot of noise. And in that moment, mate, I'm like, I could smell the cordite. And then I realized exactly 100% where I was. As that car went into the central reservation, we put a foot down and got out of there. I've realized it was like deja vu on steroids. It was exactly the place. It was exactly the scenario. It was exactly everything I thought, felt, and touched of the moment I thought the day before. Exactly. So anyway, my head is spinning out. The air's coming in through the windows we've shot out. And like this noise, our ears are ringing, we're trying to communicate, but I'm just spinning out thinking, what has just happened? It was the second time it happened for me.
Yeah.
And then What freaked me out even more is the fact we then got back to the compound in Baghdad. Doors opened. I've rolled up the car. There's a big hero's welcome for us. I've rolled up the car and I'm thinking, this is too much. I got out of the car. All the glass was falling out. All the empty shell cases on the floor. Straight away, a glass of champagne into my hand from one of the lads. Took the champagne, had a sip, taste the champagne. The bubbles going down my throat, exactly like I described the day before with my mate. Meanwhile, my mate's looking at me like I'm some kind of witch. And then we get called into the office where we don't know what's going to happen. You know, when you do stuff like that, you can't. It's not the Wild West. Well, it was, but you can't do stuff like that just to start shooting willy-nilly. And the guy congratulates us, puts his hand out, congratulates us for saving everyone's life. And we extended the contract. Job done. And the reason I talk about that, because I didn't do anything about that at that time, but later on, when I got to the house in the UK, before I got on the show, when I knew I needed to change who I was, the blueprint of who I was, I thought, but I couldn't get my hands on any money or anything, use the conventional methods to start my business. And I just sat there and thought, right, I am going to change who I am. I'm going to create this business from nothing. And that's when I went into all this visualization, meditation, everything, based on that scenario, thinking there was more to that situation that day than just coincidence.
Yeah.
And that then delivered the TV show for me.
Yeah. And how was it adjusting going from, because you obviously shortly after that decided you're going to knock it on the head. How was the transition back into civilian life?
Yeah, well, that was the thing. I was actually living in Australia at the time. And I didn't think I didn't transition into civilian life. I was mayhem. You know what I mean? I didn't transition. I was like,
You
I was
fell
absolutely
at first.
Yeah, but I dragged. You know what? They teach you to be at comfort in chaos. So I created chaos wherever I went. And this thing, you know, when in my personal life, the girl I was with at the time, who luckily was a psychologist, saved me a fortune. But you know, I was horrendous.
Yeah.
Not violent or anything. I was just a horrible person to be around.
Yeah.
And, you know, drinking far too much, and I didn't blend back into society. I was the oddball.
Yeah.
You know, and I call it peace in war, because I was much more at peace being at war, being shot at, than I was being at home.
Yeah. And then when you go on to the TV show, so you obviously, the TV show comes around. What was it like seeing people go through this? Because straight away, my negative side of my brain, if I was in your shoes, I'd be like, these fucking pussies just rocking up thinking they can do this, and then they're crying at every, like, you know, the ones when, I mean, I watched it, we used to watch it religiously. And even I got this dodgy box and I still watch it now sometimes. And I've even watched the Australian one recently, but you look at some of them and they just give up so easily. Like, what's going through your head when you're seeing these people and you're just thinking?
When you've got a group of people like that, you're looking for the faults, you're looking for the deadwood. And as soon as you can get rid of the deadwood, you can start building a boat.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, let's just push these. And when you just see people fall by the wayside, you just think that's good.
Yeah.
Just get rid of them. Because, and it's pathetic, yeah, but I want to focus on the people that are going to put in the effort. And I can't do that. We can't do that until we get rid of all those people that are really affecting the group. So it's really about shedding off all these people so we can start working with the people who have got the minerals, have got the robustness. You know, so it's a process of elimination to get to the core.
Yeah. Who were the ones that surprised you the most, would you say? The ones that stuck in your brain where you thought, fucking hell, first of all, that person is way weaker than I thought. Well, and the ones that actually were like, came through and were like, wow, like that person is like inspirational.
Well, let's generalize here a bit. Females.
Yeah. Females,
because I came from a world where there was no females. You know, in my military career, there wasn't any females on the front line. There was none of that, none in the special forces. So for me, I'd never worked with them. And it was like, my perception initially was like, this is going to be pathetic.
They can't handle it.
But mate, honestly, some of the women that we've had on that show, you know, a lot of it to some degree, I expect the men to be able to do, because I've been surrounded by men that can do it. So I'm never shocked by people. But some of the women, some of the unassuming women, you know, like Victoria Pendleton. I don't know if you ever remember that one or saw that one in Chile. I didn't think she was going to do well at all. Yeah. You know, but she smashed it, absolutely smashed it. And then in the Australian version, a lot of people won't know them, but there's been some absolute legends that have made it through on there. But generally speaking, the females have been the ones that have surprised me. And yeah, they can handle some suffering, mate. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, I work with a lot of women in my team, and like to be honest with you, I prefer actually working with women over men sometimes, because
Yeah.
they're just go-getters, man. They're actually like, they work way harder than most men. Do you know what I mean? Like I find nowadays, like the roles are reversed where a lot of men get to hard points and they give up, whereas a lot of women are just like, it's almost like there's a point to prove, you know?
Yeah. I hope all the women out there are listening to this and
Yeah.
thinking, Dan and Ollie are good guys.
Yeah, well, a couple of great guys.
No, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
true. But you've got to look at, not taking anything away from men, because like our role has been, like the rug has been pulled from our feet. You know what I mean? We are the protectors, the providers, and this day and age, that's been taken away from us. That whole unit has been sort of eradicated. And this is where a lot of people will, they lose their sense of purpose. A lot of men just lose their sense of purpose. And, it's so important we reestablish that, you know, as men. And, a lot of people now, and like we're starting to do these events where we've got a couple going on, actually. There's one coming up called Man Up, which is up in the mountains in Jebel Jais. And it's about men reconnecting with the sole purpose of what we were put here for. Men being around men and not being a provider in the basis of finances. Yeah. Reestablishing yourself as that protector, not just in your bank balance and what you provide for the family when it comes to money.
Yeah.
It's getting back to the roots and being challenged, being put under pressure, and being surrounded by a strong, small group of men that, all feel the same and want to grow and be men again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, earlier on in the podcast, we were talking about when you went on to Thailand, and a lot of people don't actually know about this story unless they've obviously watched you closely. But what actually spurred the Thailand trip on and doing that, where you actually went to rescue kids? Like, at what point were you at in your life where you're like, right, this is the right thing to do?
You know what? I came back I managed to escape from Iraq. To be honest, when I say I managed to escape, through my habits and my drinking and just the mayhem, it kind of was coming to a close because I was uncontrollable.
Yeah.
And then I was living in Australia at the time. I said, right, I need to get away from this. I don't want to ever do anything military or anything like that again. And I then went over to Australia, started working in real estate, had all these dreams about this property portfolio, this, that, and the other. And then all of a sudden, the universe or destiny had a different plan for me. And this would be the one thing that redefined my life. And that was one day I went to a party. This is crazy. I went to a party that was invited to by a mate of mine that had moved to Australia as well. When I got to the party, I was told that this other guy that was coming, he used to work on Special Forces selection as one of the interrogators. So when we went through Special Forces selection, the last thing is 36 hours of interrogation. As soon as I met this guy, I recognized his voice. Not his face, his voice. Anyway, as it turned out, he was one of my interrogators. It was just crazy. It was just one of these things where, as far as I don't believe in coincidence, it was put in front of me. Yeah. And then he told me about this operation being run in Southeast Asia called the Grey Man, who were going in, getting kids out of child slavery, human trafficking. And when I heard the stats, 1.6 million kids a year, and here's the kicker, sold by their families. I just couldn't get my head around. I still can't get my head around that. And just knowing that your kids I know a lot of it is to do with family debt and all this, but
I just don't know. I mean, I'd rather fucking die than do anything like that.
I mean, you talked about having a negative sort of relationship with your dad, and me the same, right? He didn't sell me into the skin trade, so it ain't that bad.
Yeah,
but
exactly,
you know what I mean? It's like, but the thing is, for me, my moral compass switched on straight away, and I was like, I need to go. This is my calling. I need to go. So anyway, next thing I know, initially I was like, I'm not going to go and do that. I'll help train people going to do it, but I'm not going to go. So I was doing this work on the side to help train him. In the end, something happened in my life. My life started to fall apart with my relationship there, and I went, fuck it, I'm going. Next thing I find myself in Southeast Asia working for the Grey Man, initially going into these brothels to identify the underage kids with a hidden camera and stuff like that so we could go and do a bust. And I realised that work was pointless.
Because you went in without any weapons, right?
Yeah, well, in that we went no weapons. And then what happened, we went in for a briefing one night and we're going to do a bust because we identified some kids who were underage. Went to do a bust with the authorities. And I can remember with the briefing wall where we had all the pictures and all this, that and the other, we had the briefing, and then I turned around, saw one of the agents or police, whatever you want to call them, who had his phone up, taking pictures of the wall where we had all the intelligence. And I just knew from that moment that it was just a waste of time. So when we went and did the bust the next night, the whole place had changed. All the people had changed, no problem here. And I was like, this is pointless.
So there's massive amount of corruption.
Yeah, massive amount of corruption. So then, and there's always something I've been driven, you have to, with everything in life, you have to go to the source.
Did you never just want to grab the police officers and just
Well, you do, but
yeah,
you do, but you can't get away with it. You know what I mean? You just can't get away with it, and especially in countries like that. But one thing I could do is get to source, and I heard about a guy that was going into the mountains to find these kids at source before they were, because I think a lot of the time these kids are then put into that environment. They start earning money. They're sending money back to their families. It's too late. It's too late a lot of the time. You need to go to source and get them before that even happens. And then we went into the foothills, and I found this guy had a 3-man team, including him, 4, and we were identifying these camps where all the kids were held. And then we would get the kids, the cartels would basically come up and do interviews. So like, you're going to here, you're going to the fishing village, you're going to the brothel. And it was horrendous. They'd go on these fishing boats and never come back. So it was our job to get into these places, put them through process, get them to an orphanage called Costa, Children of Southeast Asia. And then basically we would have money coming in from all over the world. And it was the first, I got there, right? Now, my moral compass switched on to actually go and do the work. But getting there, once I was there, I was like, oh my God, everything that had happened in my past, my special forces training, everything, all of a sudden started to make sense. I assigned purpose to why I did it back then.
Yeah.
It all started, and I was like, this is me. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And like I said earlier in the interview, it's the fact I saw firsthand the power of helping other people.
Yeah.
And this is what we've lost. We've lost this in society now. That, of course, we're supposed to feel good when we're helping a fellow human. It's supposed to feel good.
Designed, yeah.
Yeah, you look at any animal, any species.
Yeah, they say as well that, I don't know if you've read the book Sapiens, but they talk about how
I've got the book.
Yeah, so there's talk about there was 3 races of humans, right? And the only reason why Homo sapiens survived is because we hunted together and we were a tribe. Whereas now it's kind of dissolved. Division.
And me actually understanding that, and like I said, like that was the first time in my life when money wasn't sat in I wasn't money's bitch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Something more powerful was sat in front of me, and that was helping and I had no idea the gift that was going to give me. Yeah. And we were having so much success. Everything was going brilliant. I thought it's going to happen. This is going to be it forever now. And then all of a sudden it crashed overnight. One of our pictures got into the paper. It went viral all over the world. And then there's big questions being asked higher up the chain, who we were and everything else. Next, there's a manhunt for us. We had to escape. We had to get across the border, get to an airport, and out of there. And
what was the escape like? Was it?
It wasn't like an escape like behind enemy lines, but we knew people were looking for us. We knew they were coming after us, so we had to get to the airport. We had to get out. And luckily we did get out before anything came down.
And what happened to the guy's charity? Do you know?
Yeah, I think the charity's still going. But there was a big smear campaign against us. There was things in the paper saying, making us out to be a bunch of crooks, putting the money in our own pockets. I wasn't even getting paid. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was like horrendous. So anyway, it was detrimental to what we were doing.
Was that Western media saying that, or was that the Thai media?
That was media all over. And the thing was, it was quite interesting because when you see some of the other charities that I won't name, some of these big charities that are paying a lot of money to people in admin positions and for, they're just a con, basically.
It's a fucking joke.
One of the biggest charities was behind bringing us down. And it was incredible.
Fucking disgrace, mate. Honestly, I think talking about Donald Trump earlier on, that's one thing that he's really uncovered now is how much corruption is going on.
Mate, it's like the swamp is literally being drained.
Yeah, one of my friends, Spencer, he did a documentary on child trafficking. And it's sickening, mate. It really is. It's just, no person, let alone a child, at such an innocent age. Because I mean, even with the whole Palestine thing and the Ukrainian war and everything that's going on in the world, like when you hear about all these kids dying, and like my niece Harper, she's going on to be, I think, 6 years old. Mate, she's just like the most innocent thing in the world. Just so curious about life, loves everything, always happy. And just think that children of her age have that stolen from them. It's just...
You know what the downside
I just don't know. I don't know why it happens. It's just like, it's madness.
I know. It is evil. It's satanic evil, mate. And honestly, one thing about that work, which I'm very proud to have done, but it has tainted me in respect of when I see like young kids, and I just think now straight away that how can anyone... Every time I look at a kid, I think someone... I think about people abusing these kids, and I'm like, how can people do that?
Yeah.
And it's almost like a world I wish I'd never been exposed to.
Because it's almost like, it's what those things, right? It's like life's never the same after that point, because you're exposed to what some humans are really like.
Yeah, into the brutality of our species. But some of these people I don't consider human.
Yeah.
You know, it's just disgusting.
And how long did it take you to? Because I mean, look, you've obviously faced a serious amount of trauma in this period of time. You know, you've got the chimp right up to this. I mean, you're doing something good for humanity, and yet you're still getting shit thrown in your face. Like, what are you feeling at this moment? You get out, the media are throwing shit at you as well now. Like, how old are you at this point, and how are you turning your life around?
Well, I wasn't, mate. I was about 43 at this time, and I actually came back from there, and it was almost like for me, as soon as it fell down, I started to blame myself. You idiot, everything you touch turns to shit. You know what I mean? And then I had a very toxic relationship out there in Australia, and my then partner was confirming all that. What a load of, shite, all this negativity, which then I start believing myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that, and then internally implodes, and it got to that point where I started thinking about suicide. And I just thought it'd be... And I never attempted it, but it was the fact that I was thinking about it far too often. And I certainly know the more you think about anything, the bigger it becomes. Yeah. So for me, I wasn't handling it at all. It turned to shit. I was drinking so much. Drinking, smoking, coke, drugs in general.
Just to numb the pain.
Just to numb the pain, just to shut the noise up, and just to be this massive distraction. And like, I was in a bad state of health. Bad state of mental health, and then just thought, for me, like just taking my own life just seemed easier. It seemed like a much clearer route than trying to sort it out.
Yeah.
And it's like, and this then links in with the brain, which is then wants to find the path of least resistance with everything. That's just your mechanism. So really, but then honestly, it did get to the point where this reoccurring voice in my head, I heard this voice saying, it doesn't end like this. There's more to your story. I honestly heard those words. And then I started to think about my life, and I was like, well, and I did then start to think, hold on, you were like at the top of your game. You completed Special Forces selection. You were like one of the people that people
you are one of
would
the most,
love to be.
You're one of the most elite humans
on
planet Earth.
And all those people, like 10 people out of 250 or 8 people out of 250 that passed that selection, you were one of them. And if it wasn't for that and having that benchmark of the past that really confirmed that I had something, I don't think I'd have been able to do it on my own, or I wouldn't be here at all. So really for me, it was a wake-up call for me, and I made a decision then that I was going to change.
Yeah.
And then that was a slow process, man. It was a slow process, because although I recognized that the drink and the drugs and everything else
had to go,
it didn't have to go, because I never believed I could. I knew the drugs had to go, but the drink for me is like, I've been drinking since first drink at 14. It was like, there's no way I could ever do it. No, me telling my mates that I'm not drinking would be like, you know what I mean? That was this constant conversation in my head. Imagine that conversation. And I thought, nah, that will never happen. So managing it. So then thinking, right, I'm going to manage it. I won't drink for a day.
Yeah.
I won't drink for 2 days. Wow. And then it was a constant fight. It was the fight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Waiting for your next drink. So, it's this constant stressful fight. It was horrible.
Yeah.
But then it was actually, in the end, it's like, I managed to sort myself out. I got a decent job in Australia, but something was missing. And I can remember I got to a point where my world was starting to fall apart. And this is one of those moments where it's like, for some reason, I don't know why, but I started to tap in, I started to reflect on that moment back in Baghdad a fair bit on the road that day. Something happened then. And I started to look into all this spiritual stuff and everything else. And I'd actually been to see a spiritual psychologist, which my ex-girlfriend had advised, the good ex-girlfriend before the one I was with at that time. But she advised me to go and see, someone that wasn't going to shove pharmaceuticals across the table at me, So they kind of put me onto this kind of a different path. And I started to come out for some reason with this positive affirmation. It was like I was repeating it constantly. And I was saying to myself every single day, I said,
hard times.
Difficult as it may seem, I'm willing to accept change because it's taken me to something bigger and better.
Oh, wow.
And I said it constantly. And then all of a sudden, my world starts to fall apart. The job starts to come to an end. Everything's falling apart. And I'm going, I'm starting to panic because I'm trying to patch up the wall that's falling apart. Yeah. And then all of a sudden I went, just let it go. And then in that moment, it was like, I can remember I woke up at 3:00 in the morning. I was in this great apartment overlooking the Brisbane River. And for some reason, something snapped in me and it went, go back to the UK. Go back to the UK. This whole idea, this concept of breakpoint, which I'd had, was the DNA of that was formed by me getting through some of my mental health issues and helping those kids. That was the foundation of breakpoint. And all of a sudden it was go back to the UK. That's where your business starts. Go back. And I was like, initially fighting.
Yeah.
No, I'm never going back there. Shit. I'm never going back there. All this stuff. And then all of a sudden, start to consider. And then as soon as it's almost like this barrier dropping. And then it all started making sense. Mate, within 2 weeks, I was on a plane out of there, back to the UK with nothing. Sold everything, had a bit of money from that. Got back to the UK with the sole intention of starting this company called Breakpoint. And then I started doing some work in London and stuff, and I was like doing this, and I realised I was going to be too busy earning a living to do anything for myself. And I still had drinking problems. And I decided I want to start this business called Breakpoint, but if I wanted to be any kind of mentor for anyone, then I had to be authentic. Yeah. Broken people break people. And I didn't want to be one of those people. So I decided that I was going to lock myself away. I was going to just disappear for as long as it needed to change the person I was.
What happened on that period?
Well, again, the way I see it, right, the universe brings things to a close. It knew exactly what I needed to do. I had a clear direction of what I wanted to do, and it was helping me do that. And although some of those things that were happening seemed quite harsh at the time, jobs ending, you like push yourself into a direction here, and all of a sudden it comes to a close. So I was being shoehorned to go down this path. And I see it like it's almost like walking down a pathway, a clear pathway in the middle. We've got these brambles on both sides. And sometimes you just need to go into the brambles every now and then to be pushed back onto the path you need to go on. And that for me was like, right, I was so sick of me. I was sick of myself. I hated me. I hated the path. I hated being the carbon copy of who I was each and every day. And I could just see massive turmoil in the past. And I just knew if I kept living who I was yesterday, I was going to just be quite predictable in the future.
Yeah.
And that was this destructive mayhem. And I just went, enough. That's it. This is breakpoint. This is the moment I step into that short-term discomfort for long-term gain. I'm going into this house. I'm going to switch off all kind of distractions, the TV, social media, everything. I'm going to focus on 3 things, mind, body, and nutrition. I think of nothing else. I am the most important project. And then I started to embrace in all kinds of stuff. I tried to get the money to start this business. Doors closed. Had no credit rating in the UK because I've been away for 10 years. Doors closed, everything closed, and it was forcing me down this channel. And I started structuring my day by waking up in the morning, meditation, and visualization at the same time. And I would visualize every single day about having this company called Breakpoint, bringing people in from these corporate entities that we'd then put them through a mock mini version of SAS selection, we'd then get under the skin of who they really were, not the person they were pretending to be for the outside world, which would really help them uncover the true them. So I had this whole model. Every day I visualized that. Every day I looked after myself. Every day I trained. Every day I've consumed wholesome foods of the best quality. Everything was of the highest quality for who I wanted to be. And it got towards the end, I was like thinking, this shit doesn't work. this is a load of woo-woo. Maybe it doesn't work. Or that started eating away because nothing was happening. And honestly, I shouted at the top of my voice one day, please give me something. I wanted something to happen. I wanted the phone to ring. I wanted someone to say, hey, come and do some work for us or whatever. You know, I was trying to build this business. Nothing happened. And then just a few days after that, I then got the call that changed my life. And that was Foxy, who was an old mate of mine who I'd served with back in the SBS. I'd recently met him before I went in the house, told him what I wanted to do, set up this business called Breakpoint. And then this was the phone call. And he just said, Ollie, you know that idea you've got for the corporate business model thing? Would you do that on national TV? And I was like, sharp. He says, no, honestly, the TV production company are here right now and they want to.
Wow.
So for me, I was like, that model that I dreamt of every single day, and it was 3 months by that point, became what was the TV show. It was just like, so people that tell me that creative visualization and something you want to achieve doesn't work, then keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because because it was such a defining moment based on the situation. Yeah, I do it all the time now, and I realise because I know it works. That was based or learnt from that experience on the highway to Baghdad being shot at, because I visualised it the day before it happened, and I used that template in that house because I had nowhere else to turn. That then turned into the TV show, and ever since then I've done the same thing.
Yeah.
And I could tell people stuff, and they go, "Oh, that's just rubbish."
Yeah.
It's coincidence.
Would you say after the TV show you became famous?
I became famous after the TV show. It took a bit of time, but you know, the TV show was a massive. You know, as soon as the thing was on TV,
everyone was like,
it was crazy. Our world changed.
Yeah.
We went from the shadows to the spotlight, and it was a new thing. It was disruptive in a saturated market of nothingness, Big Brother, and all that kind of stuff. And then this bang, and it really tapped into human psychology, not into it wasn't a game.
Yeah.
And everyone watching that could relate to something. And it was really, you know, Foxy as well saying on there that he struggled with mental health issues. Wow. It really sent a ripple across the whole UK.
Yeah.
But then, it just snowballed from there. I thought it was going to be a one-off, and then it just kept on going and going and going.
Do you still do you get lots of people that stop you and they're like, oh my God, like...
More so now than when the TV show was happening.
Yeah.
But, you know, I've got 5 books and my grids all over people's living rooms, so...
Yeah.
But yeah, no, people stop me all the time. It's like I was cycling yesterday out in
Al Qudra.
Yeah, Al Qudra, and you know, just as I finished the bike ride, 2 women came up and they'd been waiting for me because they knew they'd seen my car and they'd seen it on social media, and they were like, "Can we have a picture?" Yeah. And it was like, and I love doing stuff like that. But yeah, it's a life changer, a game changer, and I've used that
because to the core, you're just a normal person, right? And but you're helping people.
And that's the thing for me, is like, I feel after given that opportunity, I have a duty to help as many people as possible. I'm not going to sit there stroking my ego, putting stuff on Egogram and that being my motivation. I'm going to help people as much as possible. So
okay, well, listen, mate, it's been really, really good talking to you. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation as well.
Massively.
But just want to finish the podcast with a few quick fire questions. First one, obviously moving to Dubai. What's next for you here?
Lots of stuff here, but we're really moving into the health and wellness space with an amazing platform that's coming out soon. So preventative healthcare, which I'm excited about. And also we've got some amazing events coming up for men. Yeah. So
sign me up to that. I'm all in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we've got some stuff in the event space. I want to also bring my public speaking over to Dubai. You know, that's massive for me. I do a lot of that. I love it. I'm passionate about it. And just create a positive influence and inspire as many people as possible.
Nice. Do you have any regrets?
No regrets. None at all, because I am today the happiest I've ever been, and that is due to the journey that I've been on.
Nice. Hardest man you ever served with?
Hardest man I ever served with?
Yourself.
No. Mate, I've been surrounded by the hardest men you can ever imagine.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't want to discredit anyone.
Pick up the phone.
I don't want to give someone too much.
They're going to pick up the phone. Why did he say my name?
Why did he say me?
What's one lesson every young man should learn today?
One lesson that every young man should learn today is the fact that the secret is within, not without.
Nice. And then if you could kind of go back to your younger self, like, is there anything you would say to them?
I would say the secret is within and not without. Stop looking externally for happiness. Stop looking externally for blame. And the work you need to do is within.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you very much. Before we go, we do have a little gift for you.
Oh,
Not
mate,
that
you know
I'm
what?
sa-
I did
not-
see that earlier.
Not that I'm saying that your skin doesn't look fantastic as it is, but it's a little gift
Thank
from
you.
us.
I appreciate
It's a nice
that.
little natural skincare set for you. Most of the men of the UAE would have seen that already. But yeah, it's a gift for you. You got to take care of the skin now you're in the hot conditions. You
I
know,
mate. Thank you
Air
very much for
pollution
your
can
thoughts.
get pretty critical during the summer. So
Appreciate that, mate. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. But no, honestly, it's been really nice to chat to you. You know, as I said, there was no way I could ever cram this into an hour, but I probably could talk for another
We could talk.
couple.
Yeah.
But maybe we can do that over a beverage sometime.
Absolutely,
instead.
mate. No, it's been a
and
long time
obviously,
coming.
when with your events and stuff, please let me know when they are.
Will
I'd
do,
love
mate.
to.
Yeah.
I'd love to come and join.
Yes.
I love this stuff. Like, I feel like just men just being around each other it's actually good for us and our families.
100%. You know what? The more you can build that foundation, that root system below you, the better of an asset you are for everyone, including yourself.
Thank you very much, mate. Thank you so
Cheers,
much,
brother. Thank you.
Guys, thank you so much for listening in. I mean, if you've made it to the end, wow. I mean, we're going to break this down as chapters so you can obviously go back to any points that you've really enjoyed. But yeah, we'd love to know your thoughts. And obviously, if this is your first time and you haven't subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because I can't interview amazing people like this if it isn't for the support that you guys show. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.